Everyone, and welcome to the meeting of Brant County Council for June the 24th, 2025. Attendance has been taken, noting that Councillor Bell is not with us tonight. Second thing on our agenda is the land acknowledgement, and Councillor Howes has that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Pierce. As we gather, we acknowledge that we meet on the lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Six Nations of the Grand River, and the traditional territory of the Attawandarong. We remind ourselves that the County of Brant is situated on lands that are full of rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. We recognize the significance of their contributions to the past, present, and future of this land. And as a county, we have a shared responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work, and a commitment to the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. We commit to continue learning, reflecting on our past, and working in allyship.
Thanks, Councillor Howes. The next thing on our agenda is the approval of the agenda, noting that we've pulled 10.2 out of the lineup for tonight. Does anyone have anything to add to the agenda, Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to put a correction on here of 12.1. My resolution here, I gave notice last week, so the intent would be to discuss it today. If the clerk's, okay, perfect.
Okay, I didn't hear what you said, but the clerk heard you. Sorry, Councillor Chambers?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add under, I guess, other business to be talked about at the appropriate time, and that's the Association of Municipalities of Ontario's response to Bill 5. And if you haven't seen it, perhaps I could get one of the clerks to copy it for the members of council, which is the AMO submission.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so maybe somebody can get us a copy before it comes up. Anything else for the agenda? Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief update following yesterday's Brantford Airport Board, please.
Okay. Okay, although, Councillor Garneau, you have the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself, and I'm hoping Councillor Chambers is going to second there, that the County of Brant Council agenda of June 24th, 2025 be approved as amended.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? We're all right. Number 4 on the agenda is the declaration of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have any that are obvious? No? If one crops up, let us know. Takes us to number 5 on the agenda, which is our delegations. Michaela, are you here? Is there a Michaela here? Speaking? No? Okay. Okay, what we'll do is we'll just go to the next one because Joan is here. She has a presentation that's already been loaded. So, Joan, if you want to come up and just give us your full name and your address, please. And you have 10 minutes to present your presentation. And then if Michaela comes in, we'll let her speak after you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm speaking to Bill 5 and wanted to voice support for Councillor Oakley's motion coming up this evening. So, excuse me. Oops. Okay. So I'm in firm opposition to Bill 5, and that'll become quite clear if you've been through the slides. You'll understand. It is an omnibus bill, and it has been passed into law. So those are two things I'd like you to know, first off. But there are very broad impacts that, considering the breadth of this and scope of this law, there was completely inadequate consultation, which I'll explain, go into detail on these in a moment. There's the creation of special economic zones, or SEZs. There are certain projects that are identified within the bill that will be exempt from environmental impact assessment and other laws, such as development in the Ring of Fire, the Ontario Place reconstruction, and the Dresden landfill. And there are impacts on the endangered species, natural heritage and archaeology, and impacts on our democracy. So Bill 5 amends 7 acts, which I won't go through and read, but there are, you can see them listed there, and introduces 2 new acts. And I'll just highlight that repealing the Endangered Species Act and replacing it with the Species Conservation Act is watering down what was world-renowned protection for environmental species. The bill was introduced April 17th and received royal assent on June 5th, and this is insufficient. It did not allow for council, enough cycles for council, for it to come to council, and this is why we are sitting here today talking about the bill after it's already passed into law. For consultation, which comes from the fact that it's inadequate because it was pushed through so quickly, the consultation ignored the requirements for free, prior, informed consent from First Nations. There were limited committee hearings. Many delegation requests were denied, including a request from 6 Nations of the Grand River. So these are the committee hearings on the bill. There was limited debate, and in fact, they imposed 1 hour only of debate on the 3rd reading and voted the same day. And then it received royal assent the following day. There was a minimal consultation period. It was posted on April 17th and closed May 17th, 30 days for an omnibus bill of this kind of scope. It doesn't allow for a thorough analysis of the bill and response. In spite of that, numerous organizations, law firms, and individuals have posted objections, posted statements on the ERO. There have been many letters to the editor and op-eds. And municipalities, as I mentioned, are in the position, most of them, in only being able to submit comments after the bill has received royal assent, including our own. The special economic zones created by Bill 5 are basically created at the whim of the minister and subject only to approval by the lieutenant governor. There are no time limits established in this bill and no time limits assigned for special economic zones. So the implications of this bill have repercussions for our future, like our children, our children's children, and forever on. This creation of a special economic zone exempts projects or what so-called trusted proponents from complying with certain provincial and municipal laws and regulations. So specifically that list of 7 and the 2 new laws that were created that I mentioned earlier. I want you, this is a typo, it should be SEZ, sorry, somewhere I have a typo, but anyways, SEZs are more commonly used in developing countries where they're trying to strengthen their economy. And I came across, the link is in the presentation slide that's clickable, a document from the World Bank that's the do's and don'ts of creating special economic zones. And creating special economic zones in an economy like Ontario's, which is well developed, one of the largest economies in North America, hardly qualifies. It really is to try and cut corners. The idea of cutting red tape has gone to the absolute extreme with this bill. And the question comes up, will other measures, such as financial incentives, be used? This sets it up that SEZs would be created after lobbying has taken place with the ministers, and it's a completely opaque process. special economic zone can be created and work can begin, and the public doesn't need to be notified or consulted in any way. The municipality doesn't necessarily have to be consulted. It's just absolutely not subject to any public scrutiny whatsoever. Another aspect is that it guts the protection for endangered species. It repeals the Endangered Species Act, which I mentioned was world-renowned. And part of the problem is that it redefines the habitat, which would be protected under the Species Conservation Act. The habitat is now, now because it's passed, is limited to the nesting sites. So it doesn't take into account migration zones, feeding areas, areas where mating takes place. It's as if the only thing in your house that's protected is your bedroom. So that seems a bit alarming, to say the least. And there are impacts on democracy. So the largest is that the province has ignored the duty to consult First Nations. And I don't know if you've been watching the news, but First Nations are organizing significant resistance to Bill 5. They want to see that it's repealed. And I would just remind you that the land acknowledgement that was just read says that the County of Brant is committed to working in allyship with Indigenous nations and sharing the responsibility for the stewardship of this land, and commits to the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, and which includes conducting meaningful consultation. There was limited debate and consultation that sets a dangerous precedent, and there's the typo, the lawless, as he says, lack scrutiny and oversight, and there's no sundown clause. So it's just open-ended. This can go on in perpetuity unless this law is repealed. And for me, probably the most disturbing thing is that some people and entities will be above the law, and that's at the discretion, with no public scrutiny, discretion of the minister and cabinet. To illustrate the egregious lack of consultation, I just wanted to point to one specific First Nation, and I know I'm going to just botch the pronunciation, Kitchener-Mekusib, Inanugwuk First Nation. So the bill passed June 5th, or received royal assent. On June 10th, they received an airdrop of boxes which contained draft assessment reports, and that was called consultation after the bill had passed. And in some cases, First Nations have not been contacted or consulted at all. There's this egregious framing that is wrong, that positions the environment versus the economy, and that I would just like to point out that environmentally sustainable projects are economically sustainable as well. There have been 41 other communities that have approved motions to oppose Bill 5, and I just, again, really would like to emphasize a major problem is that there are no time limits on this. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Joan. You were over time, but I saw that you were. Great. Can I get a motion to put this on the floor so we can talk about it? Councillor Howes and Councillor Oakley. Do you have any questions, Council, to Joan about her comments, or? No? No? Seeing none, Joan, thank you for coming. And I understand Michaela is the lady who just came in. So, I'm sorry? Oh, we have to receive it as information, yeah. Councillor Pierce, Councillor Coleman, all those in favor to receive as information? Thank you. Okay, come on up. I can't imagine why you were a little bit late. It can't be anything to do with our downtown or our park. No, there is probably nothing to hold you up, so no excuses that's it. There you go. If you could just give us your name, please, your address, and you've got 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Michaela Cargus. I live at number 2 Cardinal Lane in Paris, Ontario, and I am joined here by Carolyn Verwooten, and I am president of the Grand Erie Elementary Teachers Federation. Good evening, Council. My name is Michaela Cargus, and I'm a resident of Paris, Ontario, Ward 3. I'm a mother of 2 children and a local labor leader, representing nearly 1,200 elementary school teachers. I stand before you today to urge you to vote in favor of opposing Bill 5 to protect Ontario by unleashing our Economy Act. As a parent, I know it is my profound responsibility to ensure that I'm raising not only skilled, independent, caring citizens of the world, but that I'm fighting fiercely for my children to have the ability to interact with our planet in the many ways we have throughout our lives. It's my responsibility to ensure that I'm a steward of the earth and their future, doing everything I can to ensure we are not leaving them with an environmental debt they cannot possibly repay. Already the problem seems so big to tackle, it leads to inaction by government and individuals. As an elementary school teacher myself and representative of your local public school elementary teachers, this responsibility extends beyond my home. Bill 5 not only suspends the Endangered Species Act, it reduces environmental protections in select economic zones. The threat to biodiversity, the right for all to have access to clean water and air, is no longer more powerful than an almighty dollar. This puts every resident of Ontario at risk of being in last place to corporations, developers, and wedding guests of the Premier. No responsibility will lie with the polluters, it will fall to future generations. And it's our responsibility to do better than that. As residents of Brant County, we live within the Haldeman Tract Treaty lands, reside under the 2-row wampum belt and the District 1 spoon wampum belt. These promises are responsibilities to steward the land, to not interfere with either nation, to travel alongside one another in partnership. We commit to not taking more than we need and leaving the dish clean for those who come after us. We live next to the largest First Nation in Canada, and this bill decimates their rights, their consultation, and their ability to live their commitment to the earth. As their partner, it is on us to oppose legislation and action by governments that strip those rights and damage our partnership. As a voter in Brant County, I see this bill as an attack on my democratic right to have my municipality represent me in my region and oversee the growth, the environment, the laws and bylaws that protect us, and the economic prosperity of our region. I voted for you. I depend on you to make good decisions, and this bill negates your authority. The governing of Brant County and its lands, and it gives it to a cabinet minister with friends in high places who have never known the waters and fish of the Grand River, the sight of a bald eagle in our skies, the wetlands, and the trees. When the environment is damaged, it costs everyone more. The cost of climate change is already being borne by me and my neighbors in increased taxes, insurance, and cost of living. You have the power to use my vote to enable you to stand up for our legitimacy over Brant County and to do what's best here. More shocking than the drastic overreach of the province over our municipality is that the legislation was rammed through readings in committee under the cover of darkness. The bare minimum was applied to take away your authority. Experts were not consulted or listened to, and First Nations leaders who showed up to speak were ignored. As a labor leader, the ability for this legislation to override collective agreements and health and safety regulations is deeply troubling. My son is one of Brant County's newest employees, his first job. You and I know that unionized work makes us all safer, that the regulations that uphold health and safety on work sites protect our youngest workers and ensure that all workers go home to their families at night. Bill 5 gives the Ontario government the power to override these protections and put workers, like those you employ, like my son, at risk. They put young workers, those most likely to be injured or killed at work, at more risk so that a corporation can make more money. And I'm here to tell you, I think that that cost is too high. I've stood before this council before. I've spoken to you about the importance of funding safety measures for your residents against gender-based and intimate partner violence in our community. The opposition to this responsibility held on to the responsibility to build roads, manage growth, and keep our believe we're on the same side. My family loves this community. My children regularly sit by the river, tackle the challenging trails, and learn to push. Please do everything you can so their grandkids have the same opportunity. I encourage you to vote to oppose Bill 5. I encourage you to speak up to our MPP and your contacts at Queen's Park regarding the impact of this legislation on our municipality and to ensure they know how fundamentally wrong this is.
My name is Carolyn Crew, and I'm president of the Grand Erie Elementary Teachers Federation, representing 1,200 educators who teach for the Grand Erie District School Board. I come to you not only as a union leader, but as a teacher, and as someone who works every day to support the growth, learning, and well-being of the students and families we serve. We are deeply concerned with the recent passage of Bill 5, the so-called Protecting Ontario by Unleashing the Economy Act. This legislation has already drawn strong opposition from Indigenous leaders, environmental advocates, labor organizations, and concerned citizens across our province. Today, I want to speak to you about how this bill impacts us as educators and why we believe it has no place in a just, democratic, or sustainable Ontario. First, let us be clear. Bill 5 is not just an economic bill. It is a direct attack on Indigenous treaty rights. By granting the provincial government sweeping powers to override environmental protections and municipal bylaws within the so-called special economic zones, it threatens Indigenous lands, particularly in the Ring of Fire region today, without proper consultation or consent. As educators, we teach our students about Canada's colonial history, about reconciliation, about treaty obligations. We work hard to instill in our young people a respect for Indigenous knowledge, rights, and sovereignty. How do we reconcile these lessons with legislation that disregards the constitutional rights of Indigenous people in the name of expediency? It undermines the very values we strive to uphold in our classrooms: justice, respect, and truth. Second, Bill 5 allows for the suspension of environmental protections that safeguard species at risk and our shared natural heritage. This will not only harm ecosystems, but will jeopardize the future our students will inherit. We teach our students about climate change, about biodiversity, about the responsibility we all share to protect the land. Yet this bill says, for the sake of profit, we can turn a blind eye to environmental degradation. How do we tell our students their voices matter when the voices of environmental scientists, Indigenous leaders, and local communities have been so blatantly ignored? Finally, Bill 5 sets a dangerous precedent by allowing the government to override labor protections and municipal authority. This is deeply troubling to us as workers, and it should concern all who value democracy. When the province gives itself the power to erase protections with the stroke of a pen, none of us, teachers, students, or municipalities, are safe from its reach. We are asking you, as elected representatives of our communities, to stand with us. Stand with the teachers who are raising the next generation in our schools and classrooms. Stand with the students who deserve a future grounded in justice, sustainability, and truth. Stand with the Indigenous peoples whose rights are being trampled. And stand for local democracy, which this bill dangerously undermines. I urge you to pass motions, issue statements, and join the growing call to repeal Bill 5. Let's work together to protect what truly matters: our communities, our environment, our democratic institutions, the rights of all peoples, and the future Ontario that our children will inherit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the presenter? Seeing none, if I can get someone to put it on the floor for me so we can decide what to do with it. Councillor Pierce and Councillor Oakley, what do you want to do? Receive his information? Everybody's good with that? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Takes us to number 6 on the agenda, which is the adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting of May the 27th, 2025. Councillor McAlpine, I think you have that.
Yep. Moved by myself and seconded by Council Coleman that the minutes from the County of Brant Council meeting of May 27th, 2025 be approved.
Does anyone have any questions to the minutes of that meeting? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Business arising from the minutes? Councillor Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to speak for a couple of minutes, Mr. Mayor, to the previous council minutes, and that would be item 8.2.1, and that was the community grant program results, which Heather sent us a report for. And in that report, we were told that a lot of the groups that had been rejected were rejected because they had incomplete applications. And the question was, at that meeting, do those groups know about it? Was there feedback provided? And the answer that I got, or I found out, is no, there wasn't. So I do have a list, Heather did provide it, of those groups that got rejected for their grant applications and why. And Heather was correct in her report. A lot of them were, they wrote down no financial statement, no board list, things of that nature. But for a group, the Burford Optimists said no financials were provided. I'll read the rejection letter they got. They said, in follow-up to your application to the 2025 County of Brant Community Grants Program, I regret to inform you that after thorough consideration, the application from the Burford Optimist Club in the event stream has been declined support. It said selecting grant recipients from an outstanding and varied group of applicants is always a challenging task. This grant round was very competitive with the large applicant, and unfortunately, we were unable to fund all proposals submitted. And then it wraps up with, we appreciate the careful thought and time that went into the development of your application. We wish you success in accomplishing your goals. And that's the end of that. It doesn't say anything about why they were rejected, the specific reasons. Now, for someone like the Optimists, they applied in different streams. There's the event stream, there's the capital stream, and one other stream. But if they got rejected for the one, they got rejected for the others as well, because it's, you know, they basically were entering the same information. So I'm having some issues with the fact that if we don't change anything, we come into next year, the same thing's going to happen because there was no feedback provided to these groups. As well, it should be pointed out that a lot of the groups that did get the funding, they're well-established groups. And they're big, some of these are quite large groups. And I suspect, Mr. Mayor, that a lot of them have the expertise to know how to write grant applications, maybe better than the smaller groups that are out there. And they know what words to use, what phrases to use. And so my question I would like asked is, how do we go about getting seed funding to some grassroots groups or clubs that are just starting up? How do we do that? So they're at a disadvantage to the larger groups. And then finally, when I look at the list of recipients, there's a lot of Brantford-based groups. And when I look at who was rejected, well, I'll tell you right now, the Burford Agricultural Society got rejected, the Burford Minor Hockey Association got rejected, the Burford Optimist Club got rejected, and then the Burford Minor Hockey, Burford Optimist Club applied under capital stream and event stream. And if I didn't know any better, I would say if you had the name Burford in your application, it was rejected. I know that's not, I'm sure it wasn't the case, but it certainly seems like it. And people are frustrated because the Brantford groups, a lot of them are in here, got money, and I don't doubt that they do good work. It's just that I would rather, if we're using county money, use the county money for something like Burford Minor Soccer, where 90% of those kids are from the county, versus say a Brantford-based group where maybe only 10% of the kids might be from the county. So I think there needs to be a few tweaks to that. That's all I'm saying, based on the research I've done. And to that end, Mr. Mayor, I would maybe ask that we could meet sometime in September, October, the grants committee, and just review those results and maybe see how we can tweak it to better suit our residents.
Okay, that's fine, Councilor Miller. I think what you implied there about Burford's name being on an application and being refused was very unfair. And I don't know that you should have said that out loud because it's just not true. You can't prove it, and it sounds terrible to an association that we've hired to do this. So I wish you would take that back, but if you don't want to, that's up to you. Can you give us some examples of some of the Brantford ones that got the grants that you don't think they should have got?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
You had a
split-
list of the Burford ones. I think if you're going to compare them to the Brantford ones that you feel were treated differently, I think you should tell us what those names are.
I won't say they were treated differently. I say they were successful. And, I mean, and this isn't a knock on any of them. I know they all do good work. But we've got the Brant Artistic Swimming Club. We've got the Boys and Girls Brantford. We got the Brantford Aquatic Club. We got the Brantford Guitar Club. And there's quite a few of that. Brantford Symphony Orchestra, for example. So there's quite a lot there. Like I said, I'm not knocking those groups. It's just, it just seems that I think there's a bit of a bias for those groups in that I think they've got more, they know how to write a grant a lot better than a lot of our local groups, which are smaller, so.
Knowing how to write a grant is much different than having your name Burford appear on an application and be declined. I think they're two completely different things. I think if you look at the membership of who's on the Brant Community Foundation and you see names like Jane Carmen and people that are steeped in county, you wouldn't have said that so openly about people being maybe treated differently because of their postal codes or where they live. Heather Boyd, do you want to speak to this at all? Because I'm finding that we spent so much time deciding to put the grants through this way, and we said that when we did it, that we wouldn't do this, and we're doing this now. So I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yep, so through the mayor, just so committee or council knows, one of the criteria on the application form is asking them to explain exactly how they impact County of Brant residents. So those Brantford groups would have had to show that they do actually benefit the County of Brant. Whether we can tighten that up in terms of percentages or that's something we can discuss at the Grants Committee, but it did require that they show that there was a County of Brant impact. In terms of the notices, I guess we could reach out to the groups that we haven't heard from specifically and just send them information maybe closer to next time. I know the foundation does have education materials on how to write a grant and how to do the submissions, so we can point them in that direction maybe when we get closer to 2026 grant time.
Right, and maybe too, we could have the library have a course on how to write an application and stuff like that. I'm sure a lot of the problems are that. They just left something out, and Councillor Miller?
And I've got a few ideas, but I don't want to bog down our meeting, council meeting tonight, but I think some of these items should be discussed at a grants committee. That's where I'm going with this.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. Would it be helpful to have a motion to strike our committee to have a meeting? Because I do agree with Councillor Miller that from a process perspective, there maybe could have been a little bit more follow-up with some of those groups so that they knew, especially since it was the first year we'd switched over to this process. So I'm not knocking the way it shook out in the end, if that's the way it needed to be, but there could have been maybe a bit more back and forth with some of those groups going through that process for the first time to ensure they had ample opportunity, because to Councillor Miller's point, there is a big difference between a very small organization and their ability to write a grant application than there is for some of the bigger groups that have a bigger staff that they do that all the time. So it's second nature for those groups, maybe not so for the younger, the smaller ones.
And that's why I'm suggesting that maybe the library could give a course or a class on writing applications. I mean, I wouldn't want to go through the whole task of writing an application if you could have just done something more correct to get your money than to have something that you just didn't know you needed to put down. Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm inclined to agree that we should reconvene the grants committee. I too have had feedback, and whether we agree with what folks are saying to us, I think we should hear out our community leaders, both from a substance and a process standpoint, because certainly, even if the conclusion is that the process is going to continue as it did last year with the criteria, there's certainly a perception that something's wrong, and I think we should try to better understand what the community is saying. I don't know that anyone necessarily did anything wrong. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I think we should, particularly those who are unsuccessful, give them the opportunity to submit some feedback that we can take under consideration while we have time to adjust for next year.
Okay. Do you feel we should have a committee to do that, or should we just do that as a council another time when we have time to do it? I think the input from everyone is more important than a committee. Committee just gives you the feelings of 2 or 3 people. I would rather 11 opinions come out and be discussed. If that's what I would do. It's council's privilege to decide what you want to do. Councillor Kyle, if you want it to be a committee, make it a committee. If you don't, then we can maybe make time for it on another agenda, and we can all talk about it.
I'm fine either way. It's just we have the grant ad hoc committee already, so that's why I suggested that, but that doesn't mean we have to go that route.
Okay. Councillor Garneau?
Perhaps then, Mr. Mayor, the September Policy Committee might be the right timeline.
And do you want to spark that now, or do you want to just leave it for another time? I mean, we have lots of time till next year. And are you okay with that? Just not doing it tonight, but deciding what the mandate of the new committee will be?
Oh, sorry, I was suggesting that perhaps the Policy Committee might be where we discuss the grant
Perfect.
process as a council.
Councillor Miller?
And so on that note, then I'll move that we refer to the September Policy Committee.
Seeking a seconder. Councillor Kyle. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Consent items to be approved, there aren't any. Consent items to be received, there's plenty of them. I think there's 25. 25. Now we can, Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak to 8.2.3 if I could, please.
Okay. I was going to say what we could do is we could move all of them and then we can just speak to whatever we want. It gets a little bit less confusing because we're just going to vote on the one you're going to pull separately. So if we just do them all at once, then we can go back and speak to how many we like. Is that okay? Councillor Miller?
I want 8.2.3 pulled as well, separately, in light of the later staff report on this.
Right. So we'll do that after we approve them all, and that way we can speak to all of them separately. It's easier for the clerk, it's easier. Nothing changes, the results of nothing changes. So if I can get a motion to receive the 25, Councillor Coleman, Councillor Oakley, all those in favor? And now we'll pull the ones we want pulled. Councillor Pierce, which one?
8.2.3.
Yeah, and Councillor Miller? Same one? Okay, you want to start, Councillor Pierce?
Sure. I was very disappointed when I read this, that they're coming back for more money. This is not the first time they've come back for more money for this. I understand that, prices of things, have gone up and that sort of thing. But it wasn't that long ago they were in requesting more money because they didn't allocate enough. And some certain things that I read in here, when it speaks of the request for additional funding stems from a number of unforeseen challenges that emerged after the initial planning phase. These are the words in the document here. The initial planning phase was, several years ago, long before the last couple of times they've come and asked for more money. So I'm just voicing a concern here that it just seems to be, I believe this is the third time now that they've come back and asked for additional funds for this. And I'm getting a little scared, and I'm wondering how, what, and why.
Okay. Councillor McAlpine, do you want to speak to that, or do you want to let Anna try?
I'll let Anna try, and then I'll follow up with her.
Anna, if you
And
want to.
Raquel's there as well in the background.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for having me. Raquel is also present with me today. So definitely,
Anna, we're having a hard time. You're very garbled there. Is there something you can do to sharpen up the,
If Raquel's in the same room, maybe she could mute her mic?
She is muted.
Oh, okay.
if one of you could just mute your mics, we would be able to hear a little bit better, I think. Are you both in the same room?
we are right now, yes, we are in the same room.
So, okay,
Okay, how about this?
all right.
Is it better?
So we'll find out if it's better. You can start.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, good afternoon. Thank you for having me and Raquel. So yes, I would like to speak to that issue. That is true. This is our second ask about additional money. So recently we asked for 1.6 million, and today I am here kindly asking for additional funds in amount of $904,000. And the reason behind is the planning grant. That's number one reason. So the ministry anticipated to give us a planning grant in amount of $250,000. So we just recently realizing that this is not coming into our way, that 250,000 is not coming our way. And why? Is because in 2013, we did the development in John Noble Home, and that is only one-time funds coming for any organization who is planning to do some redevelopment. So this is not our first time redeveloping John Noble Home, and that is the reason why we're not getting these funds. So for that reason, we just got this news, and unfortunately, it took the ministry very, very long time to communicate that with us. So inquiry was from the beginning about the money coming in, but we just received the answer after the initial ask for the city and county of 1.6 million. So at that time, we did not know that we're not gonna get this 250,000 coming our way, and we already anticipated that when building our budget. So that's number one. The second reason why we're low on the money right now is that FF&Es are coming into effect now, and we are missing around $90,000 in order to commit to vendors. So now we ordering a lot of items coming our way. One of them is call bill system for the nurses and for the residents. And basically we are lower than anticipated 90,000. So in order to commit to those items, to those projects, we actually have to assure that we have money upfront, right? So those items gonna be coming at later time, but as per our procedures, we cannot commit until we have money upfront. So we are short 90,000 and pending orders. So before we fix the contract, we have a lot of pending orders coming, and they all now coming to the final stage. So those pending orders now are around 400,000. That put us in negative contingency balance around 73,000. So in order now to gain some contingency in amount of 3% of remaining project money, we need around 500,000. So that assumes the 904 in total. So this is the comprehensive picture why we need additional money. So I wish we were not here today, but we are. And I kindly ask to help us out. And what I want to say is this project actually is coming along very well. So we are at 49% of completion of this project. That's number one. We are going faster and faster. So now we're ordering items. We're making sure that we talking to vendors and signing contracts, and that's why I'm asking for this money. We also, I also talked to the ministry myself in regards to the money which were not coming our way. So I try really to advocate for city and for the county, telling the ministry that in fact we are a smaller community and we need help. So they're looking into how they can offset that to 150,000. So this is all in a conversational process, and I am putting a plea up front, and I am providing the numbers and the reasoning why we need the money. And I also try to picture a comprehensive approach to the ministry, how city and how our county is helping us. And this is more than anticipated. So they understand. They're trying to mobilize funds as we speak. Actually, on Wednesday, hopefully, I will have some more answers from the ministry, if and when and how I can go about it. I also want to emphasize that this project is 40 beds, but in fact, it's 40 beds plus, because we're also accommodating day and stay space. So day and stay space within 1 year now is basically expanding the services. So day and stay is serving our community and all those elderlies and families which are not eligible yet to come to long-term care. So these are the people who are require some help, maybe overnight stay and so on. So now we're expanding those services. So we have now medical personnel serving those people so they can stay longer with us and they can be sheltered over the nights, not just one night here and there, but also for longer time. So this is now the program which is running 24/7. So in addition to 40 beds, we're also creating better accommodation for day and stay. So, and we're also creating more jobs, right? More securities. So now with this expansion, we're really trying to stabilize the workforce, offer jobs to our people in a full-time fashion, right? So they can commit and we can provide to them better stability. And this is what we hear from community. People want more stability. Residents want to be sheltered and be taken care of. So this is what we're trying to do. And as of today, we really spent only 11 millions. So there is more million to spend. But in order for us to continue with this project, we have to have all money up front. And the foreseen is around 30 million. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Anna. I think it's, we don't have a really great connection here, so it's kind of a little bit hard to understand you. And the other thing too is a lot of people that aren't on the committee, the John Noble Home Committee, it might be very confusing as to what's going on. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, it was kind of difficult to hear those answers there, but I just want to be clear here. I totally understand that this is 40 beds plus and everything that's happening on this. Don't get me wrong. I support the project in its entirety. I'm just worried that this is now the second time that there's been another ask for money. I appreciate everything you just said there, Anna, but you also stated the fact that we're, 49% complete now. So if we've come back twice in the first 50%, does that mean there's going to be potential of coming back again for more money and again for more money? Again, I'm in support of the project of the whole. I understand that the price of construction overall has gone up. I get that. That was part and parcel of the last ask. I am worried now that we're how many more times are going to come back, and why wasn't this stuff, like when you talk about unforeseen site conditions and technical adjustments requiring additional contingency funds, you guys, like I say, not my biggest issue, but one of my biggest issues with this is you guys were here not that long ago. So why all of a sudden now are these things coming up? And then is there going to be more? I just want to make the point here that I'm worried that this is just money after money after money. That being said, I do support what's going on here.
Councillor Miller, do you want to speak next?
Okay, we will give this a try, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Councillor Pierce said. I agree with what he said. This is not the second ask, through Mr. Mayor to Anna. This is the second ask since you've taken over the role of acting administrator. It's about the fourth or the fifth ask, or maybe the sixth, since this project was announced. So we've seen a lot of increases and a lot of asks over and over again for more increases. But I'm having a little trouble understanding the ask. We have a staff report later on tonight, and it is asking for the $902,000. I believe that's being split between the two municipalities. But if I'm looking at the minutes from June 11th, now for our council members, it's on page 82. And it says, if the funding request is approved, the total municipal contribution required will be $507,000 to be cost shared between the city and the county. So the city share would be 366 and the county share would be 141. What is that 507,000? And if we approve the 902, are we going to be hit with another 507,000? That's what it reads to me, and I like to think I'm wrong on that, but maybe somebody can explain.
Councillor McAlpine is going to give it a go.
Okay, so it's a very complicated project, obviously, and it's a $30 million project. So what you're alluding to is we were looking at different options for funding it, okay? So there's a lot of back and forth going with the city and the county and their finance departments and looking at how to fund this. So at present, we have, over the last couple of years, okay, there's long-term capital projects that have been set aside, okay, in the tune of about $1.1 million in addition to this project. And a number of those capital projects are intertwined with this project, okay. So what the Raquel and the staff have been able to do over the last couple of years as we've been working through this project is we've been able to accomplish those projects, okay, some of them, through other financing. So you have to understand, to finance this project, there's 5 different sources of funding. So you have the city, you have the county, you have the province, you have the Canada, and then you also have the Ministry of Health, okay. So by accessing the Ministry of Health and other grants, we've got about $385,000 that we've come up with over the last 6 months, okay, that is potential to be utilized. Now, when we talked to the city and the county staff, they would prefer to work just with the $902,000 to keep the revenue streams separate, because we're always intermixing the county. Like, you don't want to intermix what the home operating capital is and this project's capital. However, at the end of the project, we anticipate there'll be money that can go towards that. Now, what's happened, normally if it was just operating, okay, under the county, okay, and we were financing it internally, okay, the county would have a lot more control over the project, and the city would have a lot more control over the project and seeing what's happening from day to day. And you'd have about a 10% overrun, let's say, over your original budget, okay, that you would be working within, okay. So over the course, as you allude to, there's been a number of changes in the project, okay. So when you started out, we were looking at only renovating 10 beds. Then we were going to do a new build to 10 beds. And so there was a lot of complications that happened at the very beginning, of course, with the speed that we went at, because there was a lot of grants that were put towards this if we were able to start the project quickly. So when we started out with about a $24 million project that was by the architects, they were projecting it to be. And then when we brought in the builders, it increased to the 27.9 in June of 23. And And that's kind of the number that we've been working closer with since, okay? Now that we got more and more accurate numbers, okay? And so since 23, okay, when we decided to go with the 40-bed development, okay, the first time we came back was just a couple of months ago, okay? And part of that was because we had changed the contract to a stipulated fund contract. Okay, so then for the contract for the actual build, we have fixed the prices for the underlying contracts. But part of the build is done by the home, okay, that's the FF&E. And so there's certain parts of that we've been working through, okay, now, and now we're getting closer to the fixed prices of what they're going to be, and so we're ready to start signing those contracts, so we're more assured of what we're at and what we're going to need at that point. Part of it is trying to maintain a contingency, okay, and ideally, the rule of thumb is, say, at the beginning of the project, you want a 10% contingency. At this point, you know, you would probably want at least a 5% contingency. The money that we're asking for right now is about a 3% contingency. That's about 500,000, okay? So and that's not mentioned in here, but it's in other documents. These were so it gets very complicated when you get into all this. So at this point, in order to continue the project, okay, we don't actually, should I be letting Heather speak more? Yeah,
We're going to get Heather to come up.
yeah.
Through the mayor, I'll try to help through this. So what the John Noble Home needs to complete the project is $902,000 approximately. They did look at their current open capital to kind of find things that they could do to help. That did not make it into the final recommendation that was in the John Noble Home minutes that came forward. We will, like the county, or what my report says, is to fund it from debt at this point, just to complete the project. Before we actually issue the debt, and maybe it'll be in a report prior to that, we will look at the reserves that are in place, any of the closed capital, see whether what we can fund internally before we actually issue that debt.
Councillor Miller.
Yeah, no, believe it or not, Councilor McAlpine explained it well. Well, at least to me anyways. So if we look at the money we're possibly saving, 395,000, and we add it to what you were asking originally in the minutes, 507,000, that gets you to the 902. And it sounds like you guys were advised, ask for the whole amount, and then we'll see what's left over. And then that's when we go to market and take on more debt. So I got that. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll ask the elephant in the room question. Is there going to be another request? Like, are we confident that with this money that you're asking for now, that is going to cover everything?
Okay. Anna, I wished your connection was better because I know that you know the answer.
Yes, I know the answer. So, no, we are not 100% confident, but now with the fixed contract, we are, what's foreseen, we already foreseen. So basically, we did our diligence with the consulting company, and we are confident that this should be enough. But is it 100%? No. If there will be something coming our way, which is unforeseeable, then I cannot say that, it's 100%, but that's what we're working towards. So we're working towards not coming here and asking for more money. We definitely, this is hard for everybody. This is hard for John Noble Home to be here and ask. And we think very hard, like how to assure that we using all the funds we have and how to save the money. So is it 100%? No, but the closer we are to completion of this project, which is substantial completion is actually November 28th, the more confident we are that we're not gonna be asking for more.
Yeah, that was a very, very honest answer, Anna. Thank you. Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You never should shoot the messenger, but as a member of the Board of Management, I'm worried myself, so I understand where Councilor Pierce is coming from.
Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may make a suggestion that we put, that we move up 10.6, just so we can continue this conversation, since we're getting rather into it at this point anyways, might as well put a bow on the conversation.
Okay, let's just wait and see if there's anything else that needs to get pulled out of the list of 25, and then we, if it's okay with council, we will bring 10.6 up next, just so we can keep going. Does anyone want anything else talked about? You want anything separated, councillors? Okay, seeing none, we will go to 10.6. Oh, I need, no, we approved them all. We didn't vote. All those in favor? Yeah, okay. Opposed? Okay, that's great. 10.6 is Heather. You're already there, so. Questions for Heather? Councillor Miller, maybe she can help you with, are you okay with,
As long as I got Councilor McAlpine, I'm good, Mr. Mayor.
you got, any other questions to the report for Heather? 10 point. Councillor Oakley, do you have any questions? Need a motion to get on the floor. Councillor Oakley, Councillor Coleman. No other concerns for Heather? All those in favor? Oh, Councillor Gardo.
All right, I guess I'll ask the question, what happens if we say no?
That's a very good question. Councillor McAlpine.
So we're in the awkward position is that a big portion of the funding for this is a repayment over a number of years from the Ministry of Health. Okay. So in order for us to complete the project, we have to be able to have the funds available in advance before we sign any contracts. So if we weren't able to complete the project, then we'd be on the line for all the money and we wouldn't get the money back. So having said that, this amount of money that we're actually voting on today actually won't actually get utilized till probably next February. Because this is the final numbers, you know, because we're getting closer now that we can more accurately see what the FF&E costs and stuff like that. So if you look at it in one respect, the increase in cost from the beginning, like 2 years ago, is really just keeping up with inflation, so.
Make you feel more comfortable, Councillor Garno?
Thank you, I do appreciate the answer. I do think we also, as a council, probably need to better understand some of the capital project processes, because I can see some similarities between some of the other conversations we've had. This is a version of cost overruns happened at the airport board as well on Monday, so I think there's some bigger picture questions at a point in time for us. Thanks.
Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can I just get clarification? I think Councilor McAlpine said that the funds we're voting on tonight won't be needed till potentially next February. I thought Anna said completion is this November.
Okay, so what happens is that the move-in date, okay, is in February, okay? But in order for us to sign any contracts, it's an unusual situation where because the John Noble home is in essence a separate entity, okay, owned by the county and the city. So we cannot purchase anything unless we have the agreement for the funds in advance.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate that, Councilor McAlpine. I understand what you're saying here. All I'm simply stating is the fact that you said we won't need the funds until next February, but my understanding is completion is this November.
So
tell me how that works.
there's different levels of completion, okay? So there's substantial completion when the FF&E is, when we can start putting that in place, okay? And then in February, end of February, if everything goes to plan, early March, we'll start actually having occupancy at that point, okay? So, you know, there'll be, when the bills come due, sort of thing, when the contracts are to be paid out. So this is the final monies needed for the project, right? Because we haven't spent all the money that has been budgeted, but we have to have the finance for all the money that's budgeted. It's very complicated, yeah. Did I just shoot myself?
Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so just to speak to the recommendation, I mean, I am in favor of the recommendation. I think it's an important project. It kind of does need to happen, but I will share some concerns here that some of my colleagues have expressed with, in a handful of months here, we found some unexpected issues, we need more money, and then in those couple of months, we found another 900,000 worth of unexpected costs. So I am concerned by that trend.
Heather, is there anything you think you can add? It's as clear as mud. Unfortunately, not all of us are on the committee, so I can imagine how it's sounding to those that aren't on the committee, because it's sounding a little odd to me, and I haven't missed a meeting, so it must seem a little odd. Anyway, if there's nothing else that's on the floor, it has a seconder. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And it carries. Thank you. It's called blind trust. Okay, let me figure out where we are now. Committee reports is number 9. Administration and Operations Committee report. That's Councillor Pierce.
It is, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miller, that the Administration and Operations Committee report of June 17th be approved.
Any questions to Councillor Pierce's report? Seeing none, all those in favor to receive the report? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Number 10.2 has been pulled. And 10.1? I'm sorry, 10.1, there's a presentation. I'm sorry, Brian, that's you. Come on up. Got too many things scratched out now.
Through the chair, before I begin the presentation tonight, I'd just like to take a quick opportunity to introduce Riddell Ramos. He is the new Director of Community Outreach with the county. Very excited to have him and really looking forward to all the work ahead with Riddell. So good evening all. Through the chair, I'm here tonight to present the county's next version of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. The Provincial Community Safety and Policing Act requires municipalities to have a community safety and well-being plan and review it every 4 years. It's now our time to renew. The real value of this work goes far beyond compliance, and the proposed plan before you isn't just a legislative checkbox, it's a shared vision built within our community. The proposed Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, 2025 to 2029, serves as a roadmap that helps us address priority risk factors proactively before they become crises for our residents. Whether it's supporting their mental health, helping youth find meaningful employment or engagement opportunities, or ensuring people feel safe and included. What makes this plan powerful is how it was developed. With the voices of Brant OPP, local service providers, school boards, health professionals, and most importantly, County of Brant residents who share their lived experiences and aspirations for a better community. The update reflects the realities on the ground here in the County of Brant. It's all about ensuring that services work more effectively and interoperatively closing the gaps and working to ensure everyone, regardless of age, background, or ability, can thrive. In short, the plan represents a collective effort to improve the quality of life for everyone in our community and to accomplish this in ways that are intentional, coordinated, and collaborative. To ensure the updated plan reflects our community's current needs and priorities, we took a comprehensive and inclusive approach to engage the community to inform the plan's development. We heard from over 275 community members through surveys, focus groups, and pop-up events held across the county. These weren't just online forums, they were real conversations with people in the community centers and more. This helped us reach youth, seniors, newcomers, families, and rural residents who might not typically engage with municipal planning process. We also work closely with over 20 local agencies and service providers, from mental health organizations to youth programs. Their input helped us understand service gaps, intersections, and emerging trends that might not yet be captured in data. Speaking of data, this plan is grounded in more than just stories. We incorporated data from the 2021 census, municipal service trends, and community partners to validate what we were hearing. Grounding this refresh in qualitative and quantitative insights is what gives this proposed plan strength, currentness, and legitimacy. We didn't build this plan in a silo. The proposed plan aligns with other council-approved strategies, including the Corporate Strategic Plan, Multi-Year Accessibility Plan, Economic Development Strategy and Action Plan, the Arts, Cultures, and Heritage Strategy, the Recreation Master Plan, and the Transportation Master Plans, amongst others, to ensure we're working together across departments towards a shared vision and not duplicating or fragmenting efforts. To ensure the final plan was strong and effective as possible, we convened a full-day session with all of our community partners to align strategies and deliverables with their organizational needs and capacities. This draft was then reviewed by SMT to confirm alignment with our internal policies and practices. Collaboration and mindful inclusion really were at the heart of this process. The 2025 plan update builds on the foundation laid by the implementation of the 2021 plan. It represents an evolving vision for how we approach safety and well-being in the County of Brant. Appendix B provides a view of what we achieved in the 2021 plan. 35 actions are ongoing or were achieved. As you can imagine, initiatives to address improving affordable housing options, building trauma-informed approaches into service delivery, and addressing systemic stigma are complex, long-term efforts that aren't quick wins. These require sustained investment and collaboration and should continue in some form in the next 4-year plan. 4 of the actions were not achieved as envisioned due to the evolving conditions during implementation, such as programs being discontinued, jurisdictional overlap, or shifts in post-pandemic community priorities. Some of these actions are still important and will continue to be brought forward into the 2025 update. The 2025 plan update focuses the priorities on making the plan more actionable and aligned with the emerging needs. For example, we've strengthened a focus on rural mental health access, elevated youth voices and opportunities, and deepened our response to housing instability. We also envision developing an evaluation framework to monitor progress and demonstrate how we will hold ourselves accountable to the plan's implementation. In addition, the refresh plan interoperates with other county strategies, such as our housing affordability file, our transportation planning efforts, to ensure it doesn't stand apart or separate, and that we're all rowing in the same direction. The plan also proposes development of a new strategy that impacts community safety and well-being, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. The heart of this plan lies in the 5 priority structure, each shaped by what we heard during the engagement sessions, by what data told us, and what partners and residents identified as the most pressing issues facing our community. Firstly, mental health, wellness, and substance use supports. This came up constantly in every engagement session and survey. Residents are deeply concerned about access to mental health supports, particularly in rural areas. We also heard about ongoing stigma attached to both mental health and substance use, which exacerbates barriers to getting help. Actions under the policy are listed in the full plan, but include initiatives such as awareness campaigns, training to build capacity for trauma-informed, culturally sensitive services, extending supports to rural and underserved areas, and establishing new partnerships to address food insecurity and promote greater community engagement across these areas. Next, youth empowerment opportunities. Young people in our county told us they want to be seen, supported, and prepared for the future. Parents and service providers echoed that youth need more accessible programming, mentorship, job readiness training, and safe spaces to build confidence and belonging. This is about giving our youth the tools to thrive. Actions in the plan include development of a youth services strategy, including a youth symposium, engaging youth more intentionally in our community discussions, developing new recreational and after-school activity opportunities, and provided targeted supports for youth in employment, mental health, and well-being. Housing and unhoused supports is a critical area as well. We're seeing an increase in housing instability across the county, and while housing is a shared responsibility with other levels of government, our role is to raise awareness, support our partners, and ensure that the county is doing everything it can to facilitate affordable and appropriate housing. This also includes reducing stigma towards people experiencing homelessness and improving access to services to those at risk. Actions in this priority include building capacity for council and county staff to serve unhoused individuals and their needs more sensitively, reducing stigma, raising awareness of the expanded access to community resources and wraparound supports, and exploring partnerships that help support housing initiatives. Connected and safe mobility this area reflects what we heard loud and clear about transportation. Residents want safer roads, better pedestrian infrastructure, and more accessible transit options, especially for our rural communities. This priority aims to make mobility more inclusive and equitable, ensuring people can access work, services, and social supports. Actions under this priority include enhancing transit connectivity and accessibility, promoting safe streets and school transportation, fostering a more walkable and bikeable county community, and promoting active transportation through targeted initiatives. And finally, community belonging. This is where diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy planning comes to life in the community. Residents, especially newcomers, Indigenous people, and equity-deserving groups told us they want to feel welcomed, represented, and connected. This priority helps ensure our programs and services reflect the full diversity of our community and that people of all backgrounds have a voice and a place in the County of Brant. Actions to foster community connections and inclusion include developing the county's first diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, enhancing information provision and services to access newcomers and for seniors, creating a civic pride campaign, and celebrating cultural diversity through events and campaigns. If this proposed plan is accepted by council, we'll move from planning to action, and implementation and accountability become our top priorities. We're not just laying out ideas, we're assigning ownership and making sure that progress is tracked and shared. Each of the 5 strategic priorities in the plan will be supported by lead partners and collaborations with the county. These organizations, departments, community members who are closest to these issues and best positioned to lead specific initiatives. They'll help us guide timelines, resource allocation, and outcomes. To keep council and public informed, we've built an annual progress update beginning in 2026. These updates will highlight the wins, barriers, new challenges, and ways we may need to shift to strengthen our efforts. We're also committed to transparent public reporting so residents, agencies, and stakeholders can see how we're doing. Whether it's through dashboards, infographics, or community meetings, we'll make sure that all the work remains visible. The plan's also designated to be flexible. We're designed to be flexible. We know that community needs can shift quickly, whether due to economic pressures, service shifts, or emerging risks. The plan provides a framework to pivot and respond without losing focus. Finally, this plan doesn't stand alone. It's being integrated across county departments and strategies, from recreation and transportation to housing and economic development. Alignment ensures we're moving in a common and collective direction and not duplicating efforts. Implementation will be a whole of community effort, and we're ready to move forward with social infrastructure to accomplish this effectively. In closing, this plan isn't something we write and submit because it's a provincial requirement. It's a living document. It's meant to evolve over time, grow and shift with the community, and adapt and incorporate new challenges and opportunities. It's meant to respond to real life, not just a policy. The plan recognizes the importance of working upstream and identifying those social development and prevention actions that mitigate potentially more serious harms later through awareness and capacity building, better service navigation and availability, and connecting and amplifying existing efforts. The 2025 plan also reflects voices and priorities from those who live and work in the county. From service providers to the residents to employees, this plan is grounded in local experience and collective aspirations. I'd like to thank the council and our senior leadership for their ongoing support for this work. Thank you very much for your time. I welcome questions and look forward to working with you guys to bring this plan to life.
Thank you for your presentation. Can I get a mover to get on the floor? Councillor Kyle and Councillor Howes. Councillor Howes, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Brian, first, thanks to everyone involved in putting this together. It's a very fulsome report, and thank you for the details on the strategy. I have a couple questions, and they're both related to the communication side of this. I think back to, it was probably 4 years ago, maybe mid-COVID, that we had put together a kind of an at-a-glance document that was on social media and shared with people, and probably, I'm sure it was on the website, but it was kind of one place that said, if you're struggling with employment, here's some places to call. If you're struggling with domestic violence, here's some places to call. If you're struggling with food security. And it went through kind of a top 10 list of challenges that might have been facing people during that time. And I'm wondering if there's a way for us to do something similar today. Like, I know all the information is somewhere on the county website, but if you are struggling, I think we need to maybe find an easier way to make those things at a glance accessible. And that leads to my second part of my communication question. And that is, if you're a newcomer to the county of Brant, I believe there are extra challenges, and you're not necessarily familiar with the county website. And so I'm just wondering, do you have thoughts or plans within this strategy to make these communication elements easier to get people into those resources?
Thank you very much for that question. Through the chair to Councillor Howes. I'm going to shamelessly plug brant.ca/Brant Cares. We have amalgamated all of the social services under one webpage where it all lists everything that's going on in the community and every resource that can be accessed. So we already do have that step in place. In terms of newcomers, there is a bunch of information listed specifically in that as well for newcomers coming to the community. And we are also working on some other newcomers initiatives pending some successful grant applications. So there are things in the works in the background to keep those as streamlined and as barrier-free as possible.
Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Brian. First of all, the plan's fantastic. I have some questions in regards to something that actually was just referenced earlier in one of our delegations. In the past 2 years, we have done funding, one-off funding or ad hoc funding to gender-based and intimate partner violence services. Specifically our number one key theme here, the mental health, wellness, and substance abuse supports, would sort of dovetail into those services. As part of the action items of this plan, looking at a longer-term, sort of more sustainable, more, for lack of a better term, we'll say well thought out way to address these things, whether it be some sort of service agreement, so on and so forth, or would that need to be a specific direction from council at a later point to make a decision on where we want to move with that, rather than one-off sort of decisions?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. Through the chair, I think that's part of a larger conversation, and certainly if that's the will of council to take a look and go through and evaluate what the best process is instead of having these folks come back every year, we certainly can undertake those efforts. At this point, certainly it's about working with the service providers within their existing structures to see how we can build and support, and that's kind of where we're driving a lot of these actions now. But again, as I said, if it is will of council, we'll definitely take a look and see what kind of decision packages we can come forward with.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Chambers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the second clause in the recommendation, and that staff be authorized to initiate implementation of strategies and initiatives outlined in the plan, ensuring alignment with established county priorities and budgets. Can you elaborate on that in the following way? If we approve the plan and there are various things that we need to implement and strategies to follow that bear a cost, And this is saying that you're authorized to do that, but in light of the fact that we're facing double-digit property tax increases the last 2 years and maybe into the future, how does that reconcile with what we need to do and how we can do it according to the budget?
Thank you very much for that question, Councilor Chambers, through the chair. This plan was specifically designed in a way that in the initial stages in the onset, there would be no initial costs to the county specifically unless they were already tied to an existing work plan. I'll use automated speed cameras as a great example. Under the Brant Safe Streets, we're going to support that promotion. We're going to push that promotion, but the funds have already been delegated for those initiatives. So it's just a matter of using this plan to help support that work. I'm not going to sit here and say that there might not be times in future when we'll come to this council to request funds for specific projects, but it will be done through decision packages and other avenues as such.
Councilor Chambers? Anyone else have any questions? Councilor Garneau?
Comment if I may, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
In reading this report, what struck me was the amount of what I would call raw community feedback on a variety of topics that are certainly within our purview, but aren't generally able to be measured in a quantifiable sense. I think when you dig into the working groups and the Engage Brant piece, there was a lot of good information that I think intersects much more broadly across our work as a municipality. And one of the things that I pulled out with regards to youth was that this is something that I think we really have to step up on as a community. And I can see that it's going to be hand in hand with transportation, because one of our challenges for our young folks who are gaining independence in a rural municipality that's dependent on cars, you're at least 8 months past 16 if your family can afford to provide you with a vehicle and driver's ed before you're on the road yourself. And I think there's some real barriers for our young folks, both to getting involved in a volunteer capacity or even an extracurricular capacity after school. And I think we have to spend a bit more time figuring out how to support families in this, because I know in our experience, it can be very challenging when you've got to go in a lot of different directions to get everybody where they need to be. And our young folks are clearly asking for more, broadly speaking, from the community. So I just wanted to flag that because I don't know that I have an answer to it, but I think it's something that we, broadly speaking, need to be a little more attuned to, because these are folks who are up and coming in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison?
Thank you, through your worship. Thank you for that comment. And it does, I think, demonstrate our need, which we have talked about before, for much more intentional engagement with the community. Traditionally, we tend to attract the people who are unhappy, which is equally as important, obviously, to address those concerns. But we don't tend to do intentional engagement with people who may have suggestions or actually may be happy with the services we're providing. So that much more intentional, targeted engagement is, and again, I think this demonstrated it well, is the direction we want to go, not just for this study, but for future ones.
Councilor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. And just to echo the comments of Councilor Garneau and of our CAO, I attended the library engagement event last week, and obviously the library put that on and not the county, but it's kind of the same type of setup. And my daughter was the only person we had there that was under 40. But yet we're making decisions for the community that are long-lasting, and it's her and her children and her grandchildren that are the ones that are going to have to use these facilities and these programs. So I definitely echo the sentiment that youth does need to be a focus, and we've got to figure out some sort of secret sauce to be able to better engage with that group, because otherwise we're going to just continue to leave them behind.
Any other comments? Well, seeing none, thank you for the report. It was a lot. It reminds me very much of the year in review that we had, a couple of months ago from Allison, which when you put things next to each other, right next to each other, and we did 3 programs last year, and now we do 37 programs, it must be quite a challenge for the councillors that have been here longer than me, because I mean, what the county has become and what we do, and now it's got to be absolutely because I've only been here 7 years, and when I came, it was so much simpler. And for you guys that have been here longer, you must see a huge change in the county, what we're responsible for and what we choose to be responsible for. It's just mind-blowing what we do now and what we spend our money on and how much money we do spend on it. So, and we can talk about taxes going up and stuff, but the things we're doing now is just so different than 7 years ago. And I mean, you guys have been here longer than that. So it must seem foreign to you that the county has become so involved in so many things. Not that they're bad things, but they're things that we never did before. So with that being said, it's on the floor, it's been seconded. I'll call the vote. Does anyone else want to speak? I didn't know if I asked anybody else. Call the vote then to support the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? Okay. 10.3, that is Brandon.
All right, good evening, everyone. Through the mayor. For those who don't know me, my name is Brandon Courtleaf. I'm the manager of policy planning with our county's Development Services Department. And I've had the privilege of coordinating this housing needs assessment, this project with our policy planning team and a number of others over the last several months. So I'm here to present the findings of this and some final recommended directions. We've been kind of speaking very high level here with Brian's presentation as well, and this ties into that a little bit with the housing piece. So there will be some overlapping themes and information, and it provides some more detail on that housing perspective. But there definitely is a collaborative piece there that I wanted to point out, and that we're very grateful for. So that will continue over the next little while, and the roadmap that we've put together for this particular project looks at a 10-year horizon, so that will be something that is developing over time as well. I did want to just start by pointing out one just a slight error that we did notice in the in the report, specifically in the Watson Associates final report on page 2 of section 1.2. So it speaks to Burford as being partially serviced. We know that is not the case. It relies on well and septic system. So I just wanted to highlight that we did notice that error in there. It doesn't carry its way through the reporting. It's just an error noted in the background section. It doesn't affect the data or conclusions. So I just wanted to take a high level. There's a lot of information in this report, and we've tried to do some breaking down of that. We're providing a bit of a presentation here to help address some of the higher level things, but again, we'll have a period of time for discussion and questions at the end. So what is a housing needs assessment? Really, it's a foundation. It's a data-informed study that identifies local housing challenges. So what it's doing is supporting our official plan. It's also supporting federal funding requirements for the municipality to get money and support infrastructure. And what it does is it focuses on the need for housing. So not just growth, not like a municipal comprehensive review where it looks at projections over time. This is looking at our need over time. So it's diving into the intricacies of housing types, housing tenures, so whether that be rental or ownership, the affordability, kind of housing typologies. And so we're looking at kind of a mix. We know we have enough. The kind of large scale messaging of this is we know we have enough housing approved in the pipeline. It's going to meet our projected growth. It actually already exceeds that. So it'll be phased out over beyond that 2051 horizon. It's the mix of that housing that we're concerned about. And that's where this report aims to provide some more direction on that. So some key findings that we've addressed in this report. So within that 10-year horizon to 2035, we know we need 2,455 new housing units. Those are just the generic housing units. We know that 28% of those need to be affordable to meet our needs. So that's about 680 or so affordable units. We know that we need about 430 rental units And just to clarify, that's not above and beyond that 2,455 number. That's what we need. That makes up that 2,045 number. So that's, we'll discuss this a bit more, but that will be something we have to work towards as we work on our short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. But it's playing around with that mix of housing that we're going to be building over the next 10 years. So currently, our housing supply is very low density. That was something that came up through engagement. That was something that we see in the facts as well. We do need to shift this, especially in areas with available amenities and servicing, so Paris and St. George. There's a need for other types of housing besides just large single-attached houses. But we're seeing a rise in prices. We're not seeing rental units being built, and that's really creating some access barriers as we see development move forwards in these areas. I did want to point to as well, we do monitor CMHC data on a regular basis as it comes out. Something interesting that we're tracking, housing starts over the last little while, they flattened out. The province is pushing and everyone's kind of pushing for more housing to be built, but we're seeing with the way that the market is right now that things have really kind of flatlined. And that's happening locally, that's happening across the GTA. Rental demand, though, has remained strong. The supply is lagging, and that's being seen not just here in Brant, that's seen in a lot of other rural municipalities as well. So these types of nuances in the information as we follow it, it really goes to stress the need for localized strategies and tailoring specific information and specific challenges. So that's what this housing needs assessment really tries to do, and the roadmap that we've created is to create some localized solutions. I do want to start by addressing that you'll see some kind of varying population and housing approval numbers throughout the reporting. We're aware of that, and that's something that, as one of the recommendations of this report, we're working on kind of streamlining that and making sure that that data is as accurate as possible. It's being tracked, it's being done transparently. That ultimately is one of the recommendations of the report. With respect to housing approvals that we have already approved, we believe that number is close to 7,700 units. So those are approved but haven't been built yet. That meets our need over the next 10 years, that meets our need over the next 30 years. And we've done a bit of an analysis of what that looks like with respect to densities. So just so we know here, what's captured in low density is single, detached, and semi-detached. Medium density is the townhouses, it's your low-rise apartments, and then your high density is your larger apartments, as well as your additional residential units. Those are seen as a high-density addition. The key kind of messaging when we're looking at approvals versus need is that we have sufficient quantity, but we don't necessarily have the mix that we need yet. And so this mismatch, we've noted it as a constraint, and it's something we're looking to address with the goals and actions of this report. So in engaging with the public, with stakeholders, several or 4 key themes kind of popped up. These were presented earlier on as preliminary themes. They stayed consistent throughout the process. The idea of affordability, we know that prices are rising faster than our incomes. Many longtime residents can't afford what's being built here. We're seeing migration from higher priced areas. So that's also driving up our local prices as people are kind of coming here, or other more rural municipalities getting some more value for their money with their housing. If they sell it in a higher priced area, they can find something similar in a lower priced area. Availability, there's a limited supply of rental housing specifically. So we need to ensure that new developments are including a better mix of this type of housing, whether it be that ownership and rental. And we're looking at meeting the diverse needs, especially larger rental units. And we saw a report come forward to kind of help stimulate and add some rental units previously. And that's something we're looking at as a solution through this housing needs assessment, is how to add housing stock that is rental. Accessibility. So we've heard kind of a strong demand for barrier-free housing, for the options for people to age in place. People want homes that allow them to stay there, that can accommodate their needs as they age, or as things change for them. And that current housing supply really isn't meeting that need. So we're looking to address that challenge as well. And then diversity. We overall need a broader range of housing types. We know that that depends what type of servicing you have, that depends on your location. So we are looking at, obviously, additional residential units seems to be the kind of catch-all right now that can be applied in various areas, so we're exploring that. But things like our mobile home communities, we see that that does meet a need for the community, for residents. We're exploring kind of creative options of how we can support those types of communities to maintain and improve them, but also provide that type of needed housing in rural areas. That's just one kind of example of that, but so we are looking at Paris and St. George with respect to our serviced areas, that type of density that we would typically see, and then some more creative options like the mobile home communities and other options in rural settings. So all of these challenges that have been highlighted, we've developed a 10-year implementation plan, and that's what we're presenting this evening. It's very high level, but there are some specifics to it. We've included some targets, but really with this plan, the focus is on the people. It's on what we can do to address good housing, supporting health and education through that, support our local economy. We had the discussion kind of came up this evening about transit options. We do need some density to support that as well. So really what we're looking at is solutions to help people stay in the community, whether they're starting out or downsizing. And what we've done is we've built it in 3 phases, but we've done that based on 8 strategic directions. And these are intended to be kind of high-level directions. They're not really going to change over time. They'll be adjusted a little bit, but they inform the actions that as things change over time with the market, with strategic directions, those actions themselves can be adjusted. As we come to the time when having budget conversations, those types of things, again, those actions can be adjusted, but these strategic directions would essentially feed into that to give us that basis for making those decisions in the future. I will just briefly go through the goals that we've outlined for our short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And then we can have some further discussion about those afterwards. But one of the things we do need to do is embed the PPS-aligned targets into our official plan. So that includes the changed definition for affordability. We're also opting to establish annual housing targets. So we're looking at to help keep construction moving in a way that stimulates the local economy, ensuring that we construct 245 units per year. We're looking at affordable units, specifically a target of 70 per year. And we're looking at rental units, and we need 85 per year. And what that will do will help us over the 10 years meet the need that this report explains that we have. We're also looking at introducing a cap on lower density developments, specifically in Paris and St. George. So as new subdivisions come in to encourage more diverse housing types, we would say that no more than 50% of those developments can be single detached houses. So if they want to do a single detached house with an ARU, great. If they want to do just a single detached house, no, thank you. So this, again, helps us align our targets with kind of the need that's expressed in the report. One of the key things as well with this is tracking. So we do have a growth tracking model that we're developing as part of the Municipal Comprehensive Review. There's going to be some more information on that coming later this year, but the idea is that we'll be tracking that, being able to provide some regular reporting on it, and it will in the end support transparency and accountability, how we're doing with respect to meeting the goals of this plan, and overall provide more information to us, to council, to the public, for consistency's sake across the board. One of the, in my opinion, more exciting goals in this particular short-term area is exploring the idea of ARU incentives. So again, approval of this, we haven't attached any money to it. This is just to explore this opportunity, and we see this as kind of a low-hanging fruit. But we do see ARUs as really a cost-effective way to increase housing supply in the municipality. They support rental options. It supports aging in place. It supports entry-level housing for younger people. Across the province, in 2023, housing starts, 10% of those housing starts were additional residential units. And it's been the type of housing that has maintained kind of a consistent approach across the board. And we've seen that in Brant as well. There's been a strong uptake. So what we're going to do is explore some incentives for that. these units can be relatively quick to build, they require minimal infrastructure, and they offer kind of a flexible, scalable solution. And we think that there's an opportunity to get the public involved, especially in developing standardized additional residential unit plans, thinking kind of to the wartime housing strategy, where we have some pre-approved stuff that people can come in, they can work directly with staff for, and as long as things fit on their property, they would be able to go to their building permit approvals for that. On that note as well, there will be a large community education component to this. We understand that gentle density, adding anything to a neighborhood can spark interest from neighbors. So what we're going to do is launch a public education campaign. It's going to build on supporting the diverse housing forms that are needed as part of this plan, and speak to things like gentle density. And so that campaign will focus on raising awareness of the benefits of housing diversity, as well as kind of quashing some misconceptions that we've seen as well. So those shorter term goals are stuff that we're going to be pursuing this year. The medium term goals are stuff that we're looking into kind of post budget talk. It'll be 2026 and until 2030. So we are looking at an affordable housing strategy. Our corporate strategy folks are working away at that, and that will be presented. Some more information will be presented on that later this year. But the idea is that we've identified a need for affordable units, and that strategy will define what that looks like and how we deliver that. So it'll look at different funding models, different land use tools and partnerships that we can explore for those options. Financial incentives, that's something we're looking into a bit further as well. So we're looking at grants, tax incentives, and kind of other mechanisms that have been successfully used in other municipalities, and that'll all be tied into kind of our long-term financial planning. So we need a bit more time to kind of explore that and see how the cost and benefit weigh for those. Our community planning permit system, this is a tool we've talked about a few times. It will ultimately streamline our development approvals. So it goes along with kind of the provincial push to reduce red tape and build on housing starts. And it also will give us some more control over design and form, which have been kind of consistently mentioned as interested by the public. And it's especially important for things like gentle density and compact housing, things people haven't seen before and aren't familiar with in their neighborhoods. This will give us some more control over that. And we're also looking at staffing capacity, specifically with respect to the housing portfolio. The housing portfolio is scattered kind of among a few different divisions right now, and there may be some benefit in looking into how that's structured, especially with having a plan in place to have someone or a specific division to kind of see that plan all the way through and make sure that things are going the way they need to. So we're going to be looking at the staffing needs for that and how we can manage these initiatives effectively. The long-term goals, I won't spend too much time on these, but at a high level, we need to redo our H&A or reassess our H&A every 5 years. That's part of the requirement for doing a housing needs assessment. So what we've tried to do with our short and medium-term goals is really kind of build a foundation and aim to have some of that stuff completed by 2030. So developing strategies, programs, partnerships, and ultimately that would support kind of these longer-term goals. But what we would do then is in 2031, kind of reassess where we are, make sure things are going well, and kind of build on these goals again. So we'll be looking at how the county can be involved in delivering housing, whether it's with partnerships through nonprofits, Indigenous housing providers, cooperative housing, that kind of thing. What kind of land might be available from the municipality, whether it's the need to purchase it or partner with someone to build housing on other land. And then we'll also be looking at the housing models. So innovative housing models with respect to like the mobile home parks in rural areas. We're hoping to have some more concrete plans in place by then to discuss those. Again, we'll be focusing on some annual reporting, making sure we let everyone know how we're doing with respect to the targets from this plan. And this particular housing needs assessment and the roadmap have really been we've discussed it very in-depthly internally, but we have kept it at a high enough level that as things adjust corporately, there can be some updates to the priorities and that through this plan without it really impacting our end goals. So just some summarizing points to leave you with before we have some questions and commentary, but we know through this study, it has, again, told us that we have more than enough housing supply approved. That means we don't need any more settlement land. That means we're working towards a better mix of housing, and that will be the focus of development over the next while. We're going to be guiding or working to guide approvals towards affordability and diversity. That will be kind of one of the key challenges over the next several years that planning will have to take on. That will come with a lot of coordination with partners across sectors, and we've been very involved with key stakeholders as part of this, but that will need to continue. And our focus through all of that will be on transparency, on readiness for housing, and accountability to the public. So next steps with respect to this, we're just presenting this report for endorsement, particularly the roadmap. We would begin implementing the 2025 action items. There, again, wouldn't be any decisions made on budgetary items, but those will come forward as decision packages or through other budgetary conversations beginning in 2026. The recommendation from the report is just there on the screen for those who may want to have a look at it. But with that, I will thank you for listening to that presentation. And if there's any questions or commentary, I'm happy to help.
Councillor Howes is putting it on the floor, and Councillor Oakley is his seconder. Questions? Councillor Howes, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brandon, I have a couple questions. First, I wanted to say, I'm going to try and roll all this maybe into one big question. But first, let me say that I love the fact that you and your team have a handle on this. Like this, you have captured a lot of information. I believe that this report confirms what we've all been thinking for a while, but we've got proof now. I'm wrestling with a couple things within this, and I imagine maybe you are too, and others, but part of it is, I've always talked about modest housing solutions, and you talked about compact housing solutions as being part of our plans and incentives. And I think we see in a lot of the comments that came in from the public, and we hear as councillors, often people say, why aren't we building wartime housing anymore? And I think part of the communication challenge is we need to show people that today's version of a wartime house, 800 square feet, 1 bathroom, no garage, isn't sitting on its own plot of grass to cut. It's in a building of maybe 20 other wartime houses, and it's called something else. And I think that's a hurdle that we have to work through. One of the things that I'm wrestling with the most within this report is the short-term goals. Specifically, the fact that it says here there are 7,700 units approved but unbuilt in the county of Brant. And throughout the report, the words meets our needs comes up a lot, because the overall numbers meets our supposed needs in terms of provincial growth requirements and all that stuff. But in the end of the day, just like you said, the mix does not meet our needs. And I loved what you said about down the road, we're going to be looking at maybe 50% of a development cannot be single detached homes. But my specific question for you is, in the short term, if there's 7,700 properties, dwellings, that are already approved, is there any hope to influence the mix within those approved developments?
Through the mayor, that is a very loaded question, but I will try my best to answer it succinctly. Housing approvals are not set in stone. They do come up for renewal, especially with plans of subdivision. There is an opportunity for those every so often. They come up and developers will request us to lengthen their draft plan of subdivision approval. So we do have some tools in our toolbox that way to say, hey, maybe wait a sec, we're going to have a discussion about housing mix. We've done a report on it, and there's some stuff you need to know. And then, again, it will be a very sensitive topic to broach, because when a developer has put money into studies, they've gone through the process already to get the approval, they're not going to sit there and be eager to have that changed or open that up. You risk having to go to the OLT. There's lots of other financial implications to that they probably have no interest in considering. So there will need to be carrots provided, so to speak. And that's something internally that we're looking at as staff. Again, it's a very sensitive kind of thing to deal with, but it's not to say that it's impossible to do. It will be a bit of an uphill battle, but we think we're ready for that. We have good rapport with many of the developers in the county, and we're going to continue strengthening that. And we're hoping that we can have those conversations to really address what the county's needs are, considering that many of these approvals was given 5, 10, 15 years ago, maybe we see that, don't meet the need of the municipality. So that discussion at the very least needs to happen.
Thank you. Quick follow-up, Mr. Mayor. And I thank you for that answer, and it was a loaded question. But your answer, I knew you'd be able to give a good answer for it. While we look for those carrots, those incentives, those opportunities, and I realize that your team will look for any and every opportunity to try and improve the mix that's delivered to this community. In the meantime, in the absence and in the shortage of rental opportunities and figuring out how to persuade property developers to be landlords, that's a whole other challenge. But while there's a shortage of rental properties available, I predict people will start getting creative. And some of that's good and some of it might be bad. And I think we're going to see maybe a return to the old 1950s rooming house where somebody, you see this in old movies, there's a widower or a widow living in a house and their spouse has passed on, but they've kept the house and they rent out individual rooms. They all share a bathroom, they all share a kitchen, those types of scenarios. And it sounds very old school, but I can see that happening in our community, and there's some pros and cons to it, and some of those challenges involve parking, and everybody has a car. How do you see our policy approach looking after those creative type solutions?
Through the mayor, I believe within our official plan and our general kind of policy approach through planning, there is flexibility for us with respect to those types of solutions. We've left the official plan very, very high level, not even really referring to typologies of houses, with the idea that we can get creative, especially as we move into the implementation of the policies. With respect to rentals particularly, there's a lot of work to be done to track that. So we're looking at the idea of a rental registry. So that will add the mechanisms for us to approach those types of things with caution. As you've said, parking is an issue in that. If you have five rooms in your house, should you have 5 parking spaces? Arguably. Will people have 5 parking spaces? Probably not. So we recognize the kind of nuances and realities to that. And I think, as we move forward with the community planning permit system, which will implement the official plan, there will be a lot of conversations to be had about that. And with respect to even the idea of incentives with additional residential units, I've seen some other municipalities do this with respect to kind of rooming houses or people converting a large existing house over to kind of smaller units, and they've offered incentives that way to do that. So those are all things that are on our radar, needless to say. But yes, there are trade-offs to all of that, and we're well aware of the fact that those need to be evaluated.
Councillor Oakley, you're next.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Brandon. I just wanted to sort of ask one question here about an exclusion from the short-term goals in this presentation versus what was in our public consultation relating to comments Councillor Howes just made about parking Councillor Garneau made in regards to the previous item about transit, and as you highlighted transit. During their public consultation, one of the items listed in our short-term action plan was, and I quote, develop a plan for fixed transit routes to support key housing and employment areas across the county and to surrounding municipalities, 1 to 3 year timeline. So I'm curious as to its exclusion here, whether or not was included in the public consultation because it's part of the broader conversation and isn't necessarily appropriate within the housing needs assessment, but will need to be addressed through other aspects of our strategic planning as a county, or whether or not it should be included here.
Through the mayor, that's exactly right. So we see the relation with the housing needs assessment. That's why we wanted it as a conversation piece during the public engagement. It is part of the strategic plan with respect to a bit of that timing. Yeah, there's some more work that needs to be done and is being done on that topic, kind of outside of the housing needs assessment.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you to Brandon. Brandon, this is a great report. I really learned a lot reading through it. And one of the questions that has come to mind for me. So you talk about how there's the 7,700 approved homes that aren't built, and the fact that we, to meet our housing needs, only need kind of in that 2,400 range. So I guess my question is, how does that, so if we're going to be focusing specifically on our serviced areas for that growth to try and get that housing need met in St. George and in Paris, how does that impact other parts of the county where there's perhaps land that previously has been designated for something like rural residential, or in some of the smaller hamlets where there's maybe somebody like the one we saw in Scotland, or there's someone who has a piece of property that they want to develop? Is it just going to be a hard no for any of those? Or how are we planning to address that, given that in some cases that land has previously been designated for that purpose?
Through the mayor, so with respect to the land that already has that development potential, it's not a hard no to develop it by any means. It's just that we have to be a bit more strategic maybe about the servicing solutions we're providing and what type of housing is appropriate for those lands. So it's not that we're saying no to those types of developments. We just need to make sure that for example, water quality and quantity is there for the development. We're seeing that with various studies we're doing around the municipality. So we're just making sure that those boxes are checked, that our due diligence is done, and then we can kind of guide the development in a way that will be suitable to what the developer needs to do to make some money out of it, but also to meet community need.
Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on Councillor Kyle's question, is it possible through this tool to make that a hard no? Because it would seem to me, given our priorities economically, environmentally, through this housing plan of what products we need to see, it seems like those parcels of land are superfluous within our greater housing needs context. And we have more than enough property within Paris, St. George, it's already approved to go to be able to handle these needs. And we have things to consider like environmental and farming land protection.
Through the mayor, to Councillor Oakley, so the way that our official plan is set up does have those protections in place for environmental stuff, for agricultural land. It does contemplate all of those things. We need to recognize that as great as urban housing is, there's also a desperate need for rural housing. Not everyone wants to live in a city or an urbanized area. Not everyone is going to. So we still need to have something available for those folks, right? That's not to say that the focus per se isn't going to be on the areas with infrastructure. That's the provincial direction. We look at areas like Paris and St. George with the municipal infrastructure. But we'll just need to be a bit more, I think, creative with how we look at growth management tactics in our rural areas. And again, the new official plan does limit development with respect to rural settlement areas. So it doesn't allow that rural residential severance outside of those settlement areas anymore. That's a direction that the plan took. It doesn't allow that. So we really are focusing growth so that we can, again, focus on the tactics we're taking in those areas too.
Thank you.
Councillor Chambers.
I'm wondering if you will comment on this. Historically, and we can all think of examples recently and in the past, when a developer wants to develop a property that is high in density, maybe high in number of stories, with a mix of various things. And what tends to happen historically is the room will fill up with the neighboring property owners who say that that is not compatible with our existing neighborhood. And we've all seen the room fill up, and almost always, but not always, the council will say, you're right, development, sorry about your luck, it's not compatible, we're siding with the residents. How does that jive with what you're proposing that we do from now on?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Chambers. So with respect to public input, we often get the pushback from people kind of in the direct vicinity of some of these developments, and understandably so. If you're putting something they're unfamiliar with in their neighborhood, people have questions and concerns about that. There's also a level of, I guess, push that will need to be done from the municipal level with respect to the broader public interest. So that's what this report covers. And that kind of gets to the idea of not in my backyard, right? So we understand what we need as a municipality as a whole, but then how do we address that in certain areas? What I will say is that we're very aware that putting developments like that in different situations it can be tricky, especially in infill situations where there's a lot of existing people. And we've seen that even within some of our newer areas where the plan says one thing and then 10 years down the road it says something else. And we're trying to add a level of transparency to those types of developments. So there's a few different facets, I think, to address with that. But one of them being that input and transparency upfront at the very important kind of crucial planning levels to get people's input and an understanding of what is potentially going to go in these areas. So to try to get ahead of the messaging that way. It's not an easy feat, but that's something I think through this process we're saying we're going to do a little bit better.
So committing to the plan and adopting the plan is essentially committing ourselves to saying no, sorry, we're sticking to our plan, to 50 or 60 residents in here that are going to be mad and upset and making it difficult to leave. But we're going to say no, sorry, because that's our plan. Is that what you're suggesting we should do? Or are we going to be the politicians representing the people in our neighborhoods that elect us and that we represent in terms of compatibility of their neighborhoods?
Through the mayor.
I guess it's a rhetorical question. What I'm saying is saying it and doing it and living it are a whole different can of worms, because you know and I know that, and we've seen it time and time again, almost always a municipal council will support its residents that are already there up against a developer who wants to bring in the various things that you're suggesting that we should be supporting.
And through the mayor, I guess just to that point, I mean, we, as you've said, we're well aware of that kind of dichotomy and the need to provide some high-level direction through this reporting, but we understand on the ground that may look a little bit different, right? And we as staff, and I believe you guys as councillors too, are dedicated to assessing that kind of on that case-by-case basis, and that will still be there. Those mechanisms will still be there. And we will be there to support the public and support council as those decisions and proposals come forward.
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Brandon. Yeah, thank you to you and your staff for this. There's tremendous amount of information in there, and it's actually a couple times reading through it to take it all in. So that's good. I want to circle back to the statement you made, and Councillor Howes kind of touched on it. The no more than 50% of the homes can be detached in some of these things, and you had said there are potential incentives and that sort of thing. If we look at you know, as Councilor Chambers said here, if we look at history, as soon as we veer off anything that developers want, they take us to OLT, right? So the only way, in my mind, that that's not going to potentially happen is if we offer maybe financial incentives or, you know, and that may be, you know, through DCs, or there's multiple ways to do that. But at the end of the day, if we're doing that, there's still prices that need to be paid, and that, in essence, is gonna come out of the taxpayer's pocket. So I think we need to, and again, I appreciate the fact of doing everything we can to try and influence them, but unfortunately, through my time on council, we've tried all kinds of stuff, and it just unfortunately has not worked because they'll just take us to the, whether you want to call it the OMB or the LPAT or OLT, whatever they want to call it this week, and they go against us. So I sympathize with anybody in the county that's going to have to try and come up with those incentives, because the only incentive I can see would be a financial incentive, and that's going to come out of the pocket of the taxpayer. So I'm curious if you've thought of anything at this point in time that incentive-wise, that we might be able to persuade or change. I know, if I may, I know that, you know, with the economics we're in right now, I know it's very difficult for some of these developers to sell their $1 million houses, $1 million+ houses, and they're looking for, you know, as if, in their minds, the more affordable ones at $600,000 or $700,000, which is still way above what a lot of people can afford. So I'm looking for some sort of idea as to, you know, suggestions or options that you guys have been thinking of that we might be able to, in fact, you know, carry a bigger hammer and do some influencing.
Through the mayor, so with respect to that, I guess what I'll say is we're looking beyond just financial incentives. There's lots of other things that the municipality has control over: servicing, allocation of servicing, infrastructure, construction, that could potentially help us out with respect to like timing or type of development. So we are exploring those types of things and maybe pairing them with financial incentives, but the overall kind of financial study that is suggested in here, we'll look at some of that a bit more in detail. But I think at this point, we're looking to kind of partner those things. We think that that will be an important and kind of strategic move on behalf of the county, and that's something we're focusing on exploring right now.
Councillor Coleman, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good report, Brandon. A lot of reading. I appreciate the way you answered Councillor Oakley's question about having everybody just want to live in Paris and St. George. That doesn't want to, not everybody wants to do that. There is a rural area in this county that needs to be addressed, and we have to look after the areas of Burford, Scotland, Oakland, wherever, Mount Pleasant. My concern is staff has got an awful lot of excitement, or planning's got an awful lot of excitement for all these ARUs. And I'm not so sure they're all loved by the rural people in the rural areas, especially. They build a big house, or they build a nice house, and I was on one yard place yesterday doing some bailing for the guy. I don't think he'd want one of them ARUs. He's got a beautiful home, well landscaped, and I just can't see them want to do that all. And I'm just not sure. I have concerns. I know people have spoke to me about them. As you get them there, and I know there's no, you can't get a severance yet, but never, you can't say never. And that's what I think we're going to get, these little pockets. And that's what worries me.
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Brandon, I wanted to piggyback a little bit on Councillor Chambers' comments and questions, because they were very accurate, and we have all been there. And I think the root cause of that issue where the people are frustrated and they all fill this room, and typically we support the people who come in from our communities, and usually it relates to them saying, when we bought our house, nobody told us that there could be an 8-story apartment building down the street next to the park. And that's the root of that particular problem. And so my question for you is there an opportunity for us to put the communications out there more proactively so that the developer, the home builder, the real estate agent, nobody has to count on them telling the story of what might be built in this little neighborhood? Are there things we can do to get ahead of that so nobody can come in here and say, when I bought my house, I never knew there was going to be an apartment building?
Through the mayor to Councillor House, absolutely. And that is something staff are actually working on right now, recognizing that kind of transparency and accountability is important. That kind of messaging is important. You'll see as part of the official plan amendment, the housekeeping amendment, we're going to be proposing alternative public engagement measures. And what that will do is kind of create a more fulsome public engagement strategy beyond just putting the notice in the newspaper for 120 meters, those types of things. We see the need for some localized requirements that way. So whether that be a large sign with the future development showing the colors and what's going to go where, we see that in a lot of other municipalities. It's become a standard. So we're evaluating those things, and we know that the need for that is there. And you'll see some more information on that coming forward soon.
Thanks. I knew you were on it.
Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I too found this a very informative report, and much like the previous one on community safety and well-being, there's a lot of raw comments that extend beyond just the box of housing that, again, is a barometer of our community. I think Councillor House is onto something about changing the narrative around what a post-war house looks like today, because in many ways the single detached home was a construct of post-war society. And in my historian hat, we spent a lot of time studying that in school. But I think that that's a challenge that goes beyond us as a municipality. But I also look to, as we do have newcomers to our community, housing looks very different in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. And I think that there are folks looking for those products that maybe aren't our existing residents, which brings us to the next part of the report that talks a lot about how to weigh different factors in decision-making, and Councillor Chambers spoke to this, how not to, the perceptions of winners and losers, and do the decisions we make at this table either reinforce the inequities in housing or do they address them? I think the other piece that we do need to weigh is that question of the broader good of our county as a whole versus what's perceived as the local harm. And there certainly was a file here not all that long ago. But I think in doing that, perhaps we as a council need to be prepared to be a little more forward with our developers, especially the more substantial ones, about what our community needs and wants, because I think that would go a long way towards getting local support. And, you know, ultimately, a developer they want to build, they want to sell so they can move on to the next thing. But when you have that local pushback, and we've seen a few good examples, that slows things down, and that slows down their ability to move through their business model. So I think when we're hearing the comments from the community, we need to do a better job of kind of getting to the root of what is it the neighbors are actually saying, and is there something that we can put forward that will help mitigate some of that? Because I think a lot of the developers would be willing to better work with us, but we have to be prepared to come to the table and say it would go a long way to getting community buy-in if park space, sidewalk, lighting, trees, contributions to community centers, whatnot, because in some of the folks that are ambassadors for these developers who have approached me have certainly said that they're willing, but no one's come to the table to say, you know, this would help the community get on board. So I think we just have to be prepared as a council to maybe better identify what the route is and whether there's an opportunity rather to work with the developers, because they could spend the money at the land tribunal, or perhaps they can invest it in a community service or facility that might better meet everybody's needs.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll build on what Councillor Howe said earlier. He was talking about boarding rooms, boarding houses, and you mentioned that previously, and I like that idea. When you describe it, you described half my life in university, and you'll see a lot of students will be doing that. And who doesn't have money? Students, right? But there's a lot of bylaws in the university towns, Guelph, London, even Hamilton. So I think if we do find ourselves going there, I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel as far as bylaws and how to control it goes. Again, going back to the affordability issue, it doesn't seem to be a shortage of houses, because driving here tonight, I think I passed 12 or 13 houses for sale. There's a lot of houses for sale. But when we read the comments from the public in your report, there's a lot of talk about affordable housing, and I think something along the lines of what Councillor House mentioned about boarding houses, I see that playing more of a role. But again, I don't know how to address it. The only thing in your report that, and this is just a comment, was the rental registry. You talked about how it could enhance protection for tenants. That is about the only statement in there I wasn't comfortable with. And this is just a comment, I don't need an answer, but to me, the landlord-tenant, and I've said this before, Landlord-Tenant Act is very biased towards tenants. And I think if that was more balanced, we'd see a lot more rental units in this world. So just that's my comment. So.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns? Brandon, thank you. It's full of information, and it reaches into the future, which is a little bit frightening. But thank you for it. It's a lot for us to think about, and we've all, as Councillor Chambers said, seen the full room of constituents that voted us into the chairs that we sit in. It's very difficult. Sometimes we have to do things we don't like to do. Other times it works, but sometimes it's not such a good thing. We've all been there, and there's nothing worse than feeling that we have to make decisions in front of people that we don't really even agree with ourselves, but you have to do it. I think the economy has so much to do with it. I mean, you look at how things were 4 years ago when people were having bidding wars on crazy houses, and now the lights aren't on in some of the sales rooms, and I'm just not sure what's going on. So maybe in times like this, where things have slowed down a little bit, maybe they will come to the table with some ideas and some ways to get us out of some of these troubles, because at one time they just told us we don't build houses to give them away. We have to make money, and you have to figure this out on your own. So maybe times like this that aren't like they were then, they might start to think a little bit more reasonably. So I think that the temperature of the situation is so much different now than then. So I think it'll probably fall into your report. So with that being said, we'll call the vote to support the report. Councillor House.
Mr. Mayor, are we voting on
Yes, the
support of all of that, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's all one piece you want. They want it kept together, so. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Brandon. It's a lot, but it's, we have to talk about it. 10.4 is the recommendation, I gotta get it on the floor first. Councillor Oakley and Councillor Kyle. So this is to speak about the visit of the Lieutenant Governor, who I met at a function at the Chapel of the Mohawks, and I told her if she'd like to see the county, just call me, and she called me. So she's coming for 2 days, on the 10th and the 11th, a 2-day visit, and then the evening of the first night, her and I will go from our event to open the Special Olympics. And the next day is a whole different thing with the Adelaide Hunter Hoodless Homestead and a full program of, you'll all be invited, and I think you've already been made aware of the times, and programs aren't quite settled, but that's what's going to happen if council can support it. I hope you will, because I would hate to tell her to stay home at this point. So I need to have it put on the floor, or I have it on the floor, do I? Yeah, I have it on the floor. Anyone have any questions on what's going on? She's coming to visit, and it's a 2-day event, which is unusual for 2 days. They usually only have 1 day, so I'm glad that she's coming. Any questions on why she's coming or what we're going to do? You don't really care? You'll be there. Just if you say you're coming, please show up. Seating is limited. All those in favor to support the request? Councillor who? Where is he? Oh, we can wait for him if you like. I don't think it'll make a difference, though. Even if he votes against it, we're okay. He replied that he's coming, so I'm sure he's not going to vote against it. Thank you. Moving on to 10.5. This is Heather Mifflin. Budget to actual. Yeah. She's just here to answer questions. Do you have questions for Heather? It's a lot. No. Okay, no questions? All those in favor of the report? Didn't we do that? I'm sorry, Councillor Pierce. Councillor Oakley, it's on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Let me see here. Which takes us to communications, which is, I need on the floor, Councillor Pierce, Councillor Howes, it's a letter in support of, I'm sorry? Oh, just to be received, vote Bill 5. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Resolutions, 12.1, resolutions I need on the floor. Councillor Oakley, Councillor Howes, yeah. Councillor Oakley, it's all up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas on June 5th, 2025, the Government of Ontario passed Bill 5, Protecting Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy Act 2025, which proposes substantial changes to environmental planning legislation, including the repeal of the Endangered Species Act and the creation of special economic zones that can be used to override local planning authority and public consultation. And whereas the County of Brant wholeheartedly supports increasing housing supply and economic growth, but it believes this must be achieved without undermining environmental protections or compromising the integrity of municipal planning processes. And whereas Bill 5, as proposed, risks weakening safeguards for Ontario's natural heritage and reducing the role of municipalities in managing growth in a responsible and locally informed manner. And whereas the County of Brant has made a pledge through the land acknowledgement to working in allyship with Indigenous nations, sharing responsibility for stewardship of the land, and a strong commitment to the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, of which the 92nd call to action highlights committing to meaningful consultation, building respectful relationships, and obtaining the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples before proceeding with economic development projects. And whereas both the County of Brant's neighboring Indigenous councils, the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation Council have expressed their strong concern in opposition to Bill 5, referring to Bill 5 as, quote, legalized lawlessness. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council for the County of Brant opposes the provisions in Bill 5 that would reduce environmental protections, override municipal planning authority, or prevent good faith consultation with Indigenous nations, urges the Province of Ontario to advance housing and infrastructure growth through policies that respect sound environmental planning principles and uphold planning tools available to local governments, urges the province to support municipalities through ensuring responsible growth through infrastructure projects designed to ensure protection of sensitive wildlife and natural resources, Implores that Bill 5, Protecting Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy Act 2025 be repealed, and consultation with municipal organizations such as the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and Rural Ontario Municipal Association be prioritized for the creation of legislation that would accomplish shared goals between both levels of government as equal partners, and directs that this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Rob Flack, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honourable Todd McCarthy, Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Honourable Greg Rickford, Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nation Economic Reconciliation, Will Bauma, MPP for Brantford Brant, Ernie Hardman, MPP for Oxford, Brian Riddell, MPP for Cambridge, Marit Stiles, Leader of the Official Opposition, Bonnie Crombie, Leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, Mike Schreiner, Leader of the Ontario Green Party, Rural Ontario Municipal Association, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and all Ontario municipalities for their awareness and consideration.
Everyone's clear? Questions? Councillor Pierce?
And thanks, Mr. Mayor. So with what Councillor Chambers was reading earlier with the response from AMO, is that part of this here when it talks of consultation with the municipal organizations such as the Association of Municipalities of Ontario?
Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the report that Councillor Chambers was highlighting and was going to bring up in other business was published May 25th after the public consultation ended on May 17th due to the extremely shortened public consultation timeline on this bill. So the AMO did give feedback, but I do not believe it was included within the public consultation process due to the shortened timelines.
Councillor Chambers?
Thank you, and that's probably true, but that misses the point. I asked Spencer to, or actually Spencer just did it on his own, thanks Spencer, to make copies of this for everybody. And you can see that I'll call it the tone of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario have taken with regard to Bill 5 is different than what the tone of this resolution is, although the objectives may be the same. If you'll recall in our staff presentation, the staff said this: the implementation of this act relies heavily on the development of future regulations to provide greater clarity on how these zones will be created and administered across the province. Well, this presentation and submission from AMO is to the government with regard to comments about the regulatory framework of the bill. The bill is vague, and any bill, they have regulatory regulations, et cetera. So since the bill has been passed, the association is submitting this to influence the regulatory framework of the bill. And that's the avenue that not only AMO has taken, but the Conservation of Ontario have taken, recognizing that to have the bill repealed might be the wish of the opposition party, but in reality, and I'm not a blue card-carrying Tory, but the reality is the provincial government is a Conservative majority government, and the chances of them repealing the bill are probably next to none. So a resolution asking them, or in this case, begging them to repeal it, might not be the proper thing to be doing. And I do have a suggestion, and I know people haven't read this, but, and again, just the tenor of the presentation, and I'll read for the record just the opening line. AMO and Ontario's municipalities commend the provincial government for its strong, decisive leadership regarding the threat, et cetera, et cetera. And they go on to be critical of the bill and suggest things that should be done to make the bill amenable to municipalities. Take the time to read it, because that's our association speaking on our behalf. So, that having been said, and I don't disagree with anything in the resolution except for one thing, and that's the clause that implores or begs, passionately begs, which is what implore means, that Bill 5 be repealed. what I think it should say is that we respectfully request Bill 5 be revisited in consultation with the municipal organization, et cetera. And that has much more, I think, meaning to the provincial government than a resolution that parrots the official opposition's point of view that it should be repealed and thrown out, which isn't going to happen. So at the proper time, I'm going to make that amendment. And I don't want to monopolize and take Lucas's resolution away from him.
Any other comments? Lucas?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to respond to Councillor Chambers here. So, first of all, I would say I'm not parroting the official opposition here. I would be, if anything, parroting pretty overwhelmingly the First Nations of Ontario and Canada, which have asked for the bill to be repealed. Given and within the whereas clauses, I added this in addition to, largely this is the same resolution, change obviously for the timing of it. But largely, this is the same resolution as other municipalities that we have seen, included in our agenda tonight and last month as well. But what I did add in here is reference to our land acknowledgement. I think it's very important that our land acknowledgement is not just words we say, but we actively work towards it, in which case then I would say if our Indigenous allies are speaking and requesting that it be repealed, that would be a direction we would go as well. Furthermore, I would commend the Ford government in the past in regards to previous direction that they took in regards to the Greenbelt, and upon large-scale sort of pushback on that, taking a step back, reversing direction, and attempting to take a different direction. And I think because of the Ford government's previous indication of being willing to take on that feedback, that's why I felt comfortable using the implores language for it to be repealed. But I would also be content, as I think it still meets the broader definition of what I'm looking to accomplish, with Councillor Chambers' suggested amendment there when he chooses to bring it forward.
Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am always conscious of biting the hand that feeds and striking the right balance, because it's challenging for us as a municipality on one evening to call out the sitting provincial government and criticize the way they're choosing to handle issues in the province, and then appear before them at a later date and ask for funding for, say, infrastructure projects. I think I would be much more comfortable, having had a cursory read over this AMO proposal, with endorsing it and taking a similar tone with our action, because I do think that there is a balance and there's a time to advocate. I note in, I guess this is the page are we on here, page 4, the report does speak to our Indigenous neighbors, and just reading aloud, provincial failure to properly consult Indigenous communities on SEZs and other land development initiatives often strains Indigenous municipal relationships. This happens because municipalities are frequently left to manage the fallout from provincial decisions that don't adequately consider Indigenous rights and perspectives. Such situations lead to misunderstandings, land use conflicts, and project delays, all of which deplete local resources and hinder growth. By ensuring meaningful Indigenous consultation and accommodation on legislation that determines municipal land use planning and development, municipalities can collaborate effectively with Indigenous communities to foster more sustainable and harmonious local planning and growth. I think that in many ways AMO has acknowledged our neighbors, perhaps not in the language they might have chosen themselves, and I'm always conscious of language when we're dealing with our Indigenous population. I think that box is still checked here, but I would be hesitant to take such a strong criticism of the sitting government, also recognizing that our local community did elect a member of provincial parliament from the majority government.
Councillor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I am largely in agreement with Councillor Garneau's thoughts there. I too kind of am of the belief that we catch more flies with honey. And I think that there's ways, having not seen this before tonight. I do like, at my quick glance, kind of the way they tackled it. They have addressed the concerns that I think Councillor Oakley's resolution has intended to address, but it does it in a way that I feel is more constructive and probably more palatable to the sitting government. So I do like either Councillor Chambers' amendment, or as Councillor Garneau has suggested, perhaps endorsing this and trying to model our actions around it.
Interesting. Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, and just, I'm sorry, I apologize for coughing all through the meeting, but it seems that it's better when I'm talking, so I may just keep talking and not shut up. So anyway, what I was going to say is the Indigenous issue is very well stated and supported the Indigenous community by this report by AMO, and they do it in a way that is similar to how Councillor Oakley, again, the tone is different, but the points that it makes are essentially the same. And I'll allude to another submission that is being made or has been made by the Conservation Ontario. They specifically pick out things that they are concerned about and bring it to the attention of the government, specifically with regard to hazard regulatory framework and the Clean Water Act. And they don't want that superseded by the government taking over the bylaws, et cetera. So these kind of things I think are important to say, but to be quite frank, if you ask them to repeal, if the thrust is to get it repealed, then you might better take advantage of the audience that you're getting by endorsing the AMO position and even perhaps using our own staff report to craft a position of our own, which is probably more palatable to the people of this community because it affects this community as well. So again, I'll support the resolution other than the fact that I'm not going to implore, I'm not going to passionately beg the government to do anything, to tell you the truth. But if it's changed and the circulation, we don't have to circulate everybody and his brother on this. We can achieve the same thing by being respectful and bring it to the attention, and perhaps that is the way we should be going rather than a resolution that states something, a position that may not be the position of every resident of the county, but a submission that is well thought out and worked on. Is, I think, the way we should go. So we can either table this resolution and request staff to provide us with something to submit to these people, or vote on it and change it so that it makes sense in my mind, or vote on it and send it off and passionately beg them to repeal it, which is, I'm not saying there's a parroting, Lucas isn't parroting the official opposition, but the official opposition, their position, and actually the position of the NDP party is that it be repealed. And that, I think, is something that they can take up in the legislature of Ontario rather than us around this horseshoe, which we're here to protect our residents' wishes, and that's where we should keep it. So I'll either ask Lucas to table the motion to allow a submission by staff under the mayor's signature, of course, or vote on it, and I'll oppose it.
Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not willing to table it, but I will, with the clerk's permission here, amend the last, or second to last whereas clause, or sorry, therefore clause, my apologies, to that the County of Brant endorses the Unleash Our Economy by Protecting a Community's AMO submission, my apologies, to the Standing Committee of the Interior on Bill 5, and that the County of Brant, sorry, working on the wording as we're going through this, and that the County of Brant shares the staff report from June 17th, 2025, in regards to the local impacts of Bill 5.
Are you prepared to take away the list of people you're sending it to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it's appropriate to send it to this list of people.
So you want everyone left on the list? Yeah? So you want it left like that? Councillor Pierce?
So speaking to that amendment, if I could? Yeah, I think, again, I appreciate both sides of this, and I think, there's a number of municipalities that are, opposed to a lot of things in this. And I think if we look at how this was fast-tracked, it was in, and it boom, boom is done, I don't think there's a chance in you-know-what that they're gonna, take it all back. I think the appropriate way to do it and the smarter way to, I don't want to say smarter, but maybe the more advantageous way to do it to actually get them to bend a little bit would be to not necessarily pick it apart, but pick it apart in the sense of giving suggestions and other options rather than just say, take it off the table, because I highly doubt that that's going to happen, even if all the municipalities said the same thing. They fast-tracked this for a reason. And to Councillor Oakley's point earlier in regards to how Premier Ford kind of backtracked on some of the Greenbelt stuff, maybe if they hear suggestions from all the municipalities, whether it's through AMO or that type of thing, they might adjust some things. But I think we're wishful thinking to think that just by, us sending the letter to say, hey, take it off the table, that's going to happen. So I'm in support of the amendment.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Chambers?
I'm just not sure what the amendment, is that deleting, it's leaving the resolution the same? Or is this a new resolution or amendment, or, sorry, I'm confused on that, Lucas.
Through the mayor, it would be replacing the implorers clause. Otherwise, the resolution remains the same.
That clarifies it for me.
Any other questions? So, Councillor Chambers?
And that is much in keeping with the AMO position, and I think we can endorse that.
Councillor Oakley put that into it, so. Do you want to read it? Or are you okay? Are you all right? Okay, so it's on the floor. The amendment, we're going to vote on the amendment, right? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Why do we need a seconder? Councillor House is the seconder. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Chambers.
And I think another amendment is in order in that the AMO submission is going to through the government. We don't need to be circulating all of these people. I think if we circulate our own MPPs and the Premier, if you want, and the Minister of Municipal Affairs, that would suffice in my mind. So I'll move that as an amendment, deleting every municipality in Ontario and all the ministers that will get it anyway, if that's in order.
Okay, I've already asked Councillor Oakley if he wanted to remove them, and he didn't. You still don't want to? He doesn't want to, that amendment. So we'll vote on that amendment. All those in favor? What is it? We need a seconder. Councillor Pierce?
Before I second it, can I just get Councillor Chambers to repeat who he wants left on the list, please?
Okay, what I would suggest the amendment would be, and I'll move that and directs that this resolution be forwarded to the Honorable Doug Ford, the Honorable Rob Flack, and our MPs, Will Bauma, Ernie Hardman, and Brian Riddell.
Councillor
And
Oakley.
again, there's no sense forwarding it to the Roma, AMO, all other municipalities, et cetera, because they're doing their own thing.
Councillor Oakley. Are you okay with that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will vote against the amendment, but I mean, if the amendment passes, then still happy to vote for the initial or the overall amended resolution.
Councillor Pierce.
I just, and I see where Councillor Chambers is going here, but I think that the Honorable Greg Rickford should be on there because he's, you know, what we've talked about from the Indigenous side, right?
Add Rickford? Okay. Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just sort of comment on why I have this list of people here. I do believe it's valuable to include the other ministers other than Minister Flack, Minister Rickford, as Councillor Pierce highlighted for that reason, Minister McCarthy as it relates to his portfolio of the environment, conservation, and parks. And I also believe it's relevant and important for us to also be, in addition to, as we've discussed at our Government Relations Committee, not only advocating to the government, which yes is a majority of government, but also advocating to the opposition parties, of which all are included in this conversation. And in terms of forwarding on to the other Ontario municipalities, it helps, you know, this whole conversation was sparked by a municipality sending their own resolution to us. It helps build sort of voices if we are sharing that we're also joining sort of the call for action. So I believe all the people on this list are there for a reason.
Okay, so we have an amendment by Councillor Chambers to limit the list of people we're sending it to, he just said it, adding Rickford to the mix, but the Premier and our MPs and MPPs. So the amendment will be to support Councillor Chambers' list. If it fails, we'll go back to the original list. Councillor Chambers?
And again, the reason I'm suggesting that it be limited to that is I'm going to suggest that to accompany the resolution to these people, the county position as outlined by our staff be included with that. So there's no sense, I think, in sending a document of that nature to every municipality and all these other people. It's what we want the government of Ontario to do. And quite frankly, it's might be a statement to the other people, but we don't need to make a statement. We need to make sure that what we want to have happen happens.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Okay, it carries. So now we go back to the original, amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Chambers.
And finally, Mr. Mayor, could I suggest that staff, under your signature, prepare something to outline how this is basically outlining our staff report in a way that makes sense to the ministry.
Yeah. Councillor Oakley can review it. Thank you. That was kind of hurt a little bit, that one did. We're going to now go to 12.3, is it, or 12.2? 12.2, Councillor Garneau and Councillor Kyle. Let's get it on the floor. You'll put it on the floor, and she'll second it. Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I hope you'll beg indulgence that Councillor Kyle can also help introduce this, because what we have ahead of us are three resolutions that reflect what we hope are a collaborative response to questions, concerns, and comments that arose earlier this year with regards to government relations activities more generally at the county and on behalf of council. So what you'll see in the first resolution is, if adopted, direction to staff to formalize the Government Relations Committee's terms of reference, membership, reporting, and a process for appointing I think in many ways, perhaps we were collectively responsible for the oversight that was not more formally articulating what our expectations were of each other at the outset. And I don't think we reasonably could have foreseen how things unfolded because this was uncharted territory for us as a council. So I think the intent here is to ask our staff, who are the experts in terms of reference process, whatnot, to go away and come back with a product for us to discuss as a council. But we'll defer to Councillor Kyle if she has further comments.
Councillor Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. And yeah, thanks to Councillor Garneau for kind of introducing the our thoughts behind this. But one of the things I did want to point out is the suggested change to the composition of the committee. I think that was one of the unintended consequences of keeping that as a small committee. It really made things challenging in terms of quorum. So I think it kind of expanding the size of the committee does two things. It addresses that issue that was something that was kind of an ongoing challenge, but it also then provides more voices at the table for the Government Relations Committee and the topics that they have to discuss. So I just wanted to point that out specifically. But I do think that a more formalized terms of reference around the committee, it was a new committee, it was a new idea, so we kind of ran with it for the first year and a bit. But I do think it has tremendous value. So to call it a day and get rid of it, I don't think is the right choice. I think if anything, we need to be really upping our government relations work in terms of building those relationships with those different levels of government. So I think that this kind of where we're going with this resolution really helps to put some framework around that and make it hopefully something that can kind of pick up the torch that's been lit and carry it further and hopefully do some more good work in building those relationships that we desperately need to make sure that our infrastructure and other projects are moving forward at all levels.
Comments? Councillor Chambers?
Has there been a thought to create a standing committee of council called the Government Relations Committee to meet with all members of council, similar to the Coleman's committee that he chairs, whatever it's called, I forget. Policy and Development Committee meets every second month. This committee could meet alternatively, and we would all be part and parcel of any discussions with regard to government relations. Is there any thought of that? Because that's what my preference would be.
Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I had one comment sort of on the same lines there as Councillor Chambers, and one question. So my comment would be that I support the idea of expanding the membership here. When this resolution 2 years ago was originally brought forward by Councillor Kyle, Councillor Garneau, and myself to sort of create this committee, I think we looked at a larger membership and we had that shrunk. But at this point, I think it is clear that the membership doesn't need to be larger. I had not considered the idea of having a standing committee, but I actually think, I think that's a fantastic idea, so I'd be happy to support something along the lines of what Councillor Chambers has suggested. And then my one other question that might be irrelevant if we go the direction of what Councillor Chambers is suggesting, the fourth clause here, and that the chair and vice chair be appointed from the committee from among councillor members in the accordance with procedural bylaw. Would we, in this term of that committee, be looking to go through reappointing or maintain the current? Not that to be clear, I'm not married to my vice chair role. I got it out of, I was the only other person on the board. That's not my concern there. I'm not being protector around it. I'm just curious whether or not the intent is that we re-elect those members.
Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking for myself, certainly not opposed to a standing committee of council. I think that one of the challenges that led to the previous notice of motion that I had served along with the revised resolutions was that this committee, when we reviewed our standing committees and we reviewed our advisory committees, somewhat fell through the cracks because it didn't have a home in our governance structure as an organization. I'd certainly be open to, in an earlier iteration in my mind, that the Policy Development Committee might have been the place to have those conversations. So whether it is there or council as a whole, I think that's certainly reasonable. As far as process, I think, speaking to Councillor Oakley's question, the way this reads is we would be appointing new folks, and if folks found themselves in roles they already hold, that's certainly an outcome that could happen, but I don't think that it's prescribed. I know one of the comments when I stepped away from government relations because I couldn't navigate it from a scheduling standpoint was that there were folks around the table who had wanted to signal an interest who didn't have an opportunity to do so as far as the way that the prior committee was constructed. So certainly, at least from my perspective, this was intended to be a conversation starter and to see kind of where we're headed as a council and as a group. So I'm glad to see we're going there. So thank you.
Allison.
Thank you. Through your worship, just perhaps a suggestion, building upon what Councillor Chambers mentioned, as there is no dedicated staff or budget right now. This is sort of in its infancy. So I might suggest for this year to perhaps add a section to our policy and strategic direction committee where we can address government relations. That way we're not adding another committee to our schedule. And it's not at this point particularly onerous because, as I said, it is in its infancy with no real budget attached to it. If it at any point becomes more onerous, we can definitely talk about separating it into a separate committee, but that would give it some structure with everybody around the table at the same time.
Other comments? Councillor Coleman?
I like the idea of Councillor Chamber. We got away from these little committees a number of years ago because one half didn't know what the hell the other half was doing. And then they all grumbled when we come to council. This committee did not know what was going on. So we disbanded Public Works, Community Services, and put it all together into one committee. We all sit as a whole. And I believe that's the way it should happen. So that way everybody knows what's going on. Because you're just 4 or 5. It's just your 4 or 5 idea. I want to know what the whole council thinks. And that's what happened 7, 8 years ago. We got rid of those little committees. You were there, Mr. Mayor. Put it all together, and it's operated pretty good. Sometimes the meetings get a little long, but everybody knows what's on the table.
Yeah, I don't understand what was wrong with the way we were doing it before. I see all the councillors with their own expertise and their own, you all bring something different to the table, and I just can't imagine that the right things wouldn't happen. The Minister of Agriculture, the farmers go because they're interested and they know the language and they know what to ask and what to expect and what to look for. And Councillor Bell here, he's the parking guy, so he goes, he's here, by the way, so stop talking about him. You can sit in your chair, Councillor Bell. We do have you timed as to when you walked in the door. But we all bring something to the table. I don't understand why. The only thing that I can see that was going wrong before is that maybe too many of us were in the room. And that's only because we were there and we met with ministers and stuff like that, where maybe we all shouldn't have gone. We should have just made it more compact. But I think Councillor Coleman's right in the fact that we all are interested in different things more passionately, and we all know something about different things that other people do. And I'm just not sure that we shouldn't do that. And maybe before we didn't talk about it out loud. So problems happened maybe, or people felt not included or whatever. So maybe now that we've talked about it, maybe we don't need that committee. We just need to talk about who's going to see who and when. And if you want to see a minister, if Councillor Kyle wants to make an appointment with the minister for whatever reason, she should go and speak to the minister and take someone with her that's also passionate about why she wants to see the minister. and just leave it flexible like that so that no one feels left out and no one feels like they're being bombarded by someone who's doing more or getting more, not airtime, but more of a profile than somebody else just because they do. Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to sort of follow on that thread. So I don't necessarily care per se whether or not this stays as a smaller committee, goes to be its own standing committee, becomes a regular portion of our policy development committee. That's not, the specific mechanics of how we go about our government relations is not really what's important to me. But I do think that this committee and the change to our structure there has had a lot of value, primarily in my first year on council before we had this committee. Delegations, how we chose to prioritize things, what delegations we applied for at different conferences was very slapdash. It was just send an email to the CAO and the mayor at the time. When the delegation request came out, you make your suggestions. It's arbitrarily chosen by the mayor and the CAO. This has enabled us to have a more well-defined strategy going forward, what our year's priorities are going to be, how we're going to approach things, which delegations we're going to request with what ministers, and then also something that I noticed in our first set of conferences is folks would just show up at a delegation and there'd be no structure in terms of who was actually going to be leading the delegation, who was responsible for what. I think that also was a benefit of this committee. And as we've previously discussed around this table when we've been discussing government relations, the Government Relations Committee over the past 6 months, I don't think it's necessarily required that members of that Government Relations Committee were the ones leading it, but a decision needed to be made on who was leading what. And I think that came out of that Government Relations Committee. So whether we do it as part of its own standing committee, whether we do it as part of policy development, or whether or not we keep this smaller committee, again, don't really care which way we go there, but I think it is important. I think we have shown the value of having a more dedicated, more focused, more directed government relations strategy, and I would find it a shame if we lose that through any of this conversation.
Okay, and I would just like to add to that there's a difference between a meeting and a delegation. A delegation, no matter how you want to cut it, is 7 minutes or 10 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever it is. I'm talking about the committee or the people that want to go and speak to a minister have an actual meeting where you go and you go to their office, and it's not about a conference. I mean, the conference timepieces that we have are truly just minutes of time. They're not a meeting. I don't know why people keep saying that they're a meeting, because they're not. A meeting is not when you go into a room with 4 other people and no one says anything to you and you don't say anything to anyone else. That's not a meeting. That's a delegation, and you're just there as a shadow of whoever's speaking. So I think we have to decide that if we want to go and meet with the Minister of Transportation, we call them and we set up a meeting, and the people that want to go to that meeting, whether it's Councillor Kyle and Councillor Bell or me or whoever, go to the meeting and report back to the entire council. And then when we speak to Ernie Hardeman, if the farmers want to go and talk to Ernie, that's great. Bring back the report, and you've got the interest, and then it's a meeting. It's a documented meeting. Someone takes minutes and it's over. The delegations, I mean, whether 4 people go or 3 people go, if you go with the right spirit and you want to be there, it's all just a facade of 7 minutes. So I see a difference between the delegations and an actual meeting with the ministers. I think the meetings with the ministers are very valuable, but they're not a delegation at a convention. Councillor Oakley.
Mr. Mayor, I am going to have to respectfully disagree here with, not on the aspect of that there's a difference between a meeting and a delegation. For sure, you're going to get more done with the meeting as opposed to the shorter delegation. But I do think you are undervaluing what we have accomplished through those delegations. One of the things that came out recently was that the hospital project was moving over to a greenfield project that is now public. It's in the budget. And that came out of conversations that we have had at the delegation meetings with Minister Jones. So I think we cannot undervalue that aspect, though yes, I do believe we should also prioritize making actual longer meetings, but I do not think we should be undervaluing those delegations and what they accomplish.
No, and I agree with you, Councillor Oakley, and you say that you got things out of it. You did, Councillor Kyle did, I didn't get invited. other people didn't get invited. So Councillor Kyling and you might see value in it because you're the only two that have participated as a appointed committee from this council so far. Councillor Kyling, you're next.
Yeah, I'm just, to that point, I don't think that was a fair comment, so.
It was true, whether it's fair or not, it's true. You and Councillor Oakley decided to go for a trip, and I didn't know about it, and I was the third person on your.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, can we please bring this back to this part of the meeting? I think what I'm hearing here is that there's some discussion around the tactics that are taken as part of the broader government relations strategy. And I think that is what we're trying to accomplish here with this, putting a terms of reference around something. So whether that is a committee of the whole type structure, whether it is a smaller committee, I don't think that, I think that's kind of up to council as to how that, what that looks like. But I think to put some strategy around what that body is going to accomplish. And to Councillor Oakley's point, I think that that does include things like delegations. That does include hopefully setting up some longer structured meetings with either our local representatives or ministers, whether that's just generally building good relationships with those other levels of government and with other government officials from our neighboring municipalities. I think it's a much broader strategy that we're trying to accomplish with that. I think we've started down the right path, but I do think we need to put some structure around it in some capacity.
Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I think there's three options ahead of us this evening in terms of this resolution that's right here. And I think that the questions that we have to ask ourselves as a council is, do we want to continue on as we have been for the last, give or take, 2 years? Do we want to perhaps move forward with the language that was circulated with the agenda? Or do we want to consider kind of what's been a collaboratively formed thought that perhaps the Policy and Development Committee might be the right venue for government relations discussions on an interim basis? And I think there's general agreement that engaging in government relations in a strategic manner is important to us collectively. So the question is sort of, how do we then make the decisions around what our strategy is? So as I see it, we could vote down the resolution in front of us, which would in effect leave us open to either the status quo or a new resolution. We could amend it such that policy development might be the right interim solution. Yeah, I think those are kind of the options ahead of us, and I would, I guess, throw it out to folks who haven't spoken to jump in here because there's a lot of opinions on the table.
Councillor Miller.
Yeah, I'm a little torn on the whole government relations committee to begin with, and I'll go back to what you said, Mayor, about 4 minutes ago. If we want to meet with the minister, we request to meet with the minister, and that's what I've done. Councillor Kyle and I have met with MPP Hardeman about a local issue. We didn't go through the government relations committee. Councillor Garneau and I met with some school trustees. We didn't go through the government relations committee. I met with the MPP regarding grow ops. I didn't go through the government relations committee. So, and I don't want to belittle what the committee's done. I think you guys have narrowed the focus too on what's important and what we should be working on. But at the same time, yeah, I don't want it taken away from my ability to do things like that. So, yeah, a little bit torn on the whole committee in general. If we got rid of it, I certainly wouldn't be shedding any tears tonight, though.
Councillor House.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't said anything about this yet, but I am supportive of what Councillor Chambers was saying, to transition this to something where we're all involved. And I believe that the benefit to that is, I think we all learn something from it. I haven't obviously been involved in any of the Government Relations Committee meetings, but I know that I would learn something from hearing some of the discussions that go along. And I think that's to the benefit of everybody. So just to move this along, I will move that we take that approach, and if there's a seconder, we can discuss and then vote and see where it goes.
Seeking a seconder, Councillor Chambers, or Councillor Coleman. Discussion. Councillor Pierce.
What exactly is the motion? Is it we put it into the policy?
Yes.
Yeah, Councillor Chambers
Okay.
spoke to it first.
Okay.
Do you want to repeat it again?
As our CAO suggested that this may be an interim, that it be part of the Policy Development Committee as a government relations component of that. And I think that's what Allison is suggesting, and that's what we can support. And as we proceed, we may evolve it into a standing committee in and of itself, meeting when or whatever. And that would allow us to have staff develop the terms of reference and mandate meeting, et cetera. So that's, I think, what Steve is saying, and I'll second that if nobody else did.
You're seconding that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Conversation, comments? Councillor Garneau?
I think that's the right path forward, but I want to ask the clerk if procedurally we're in step right now. 'Cause that sounds like a new motion rather than an amendment and
Yeah.
how we might handle
I don't think
things.
it's an amendment, is it? It's a brand-new motion.
I would certainly be prepared to withdraw, but I think that's a council decision. Because council, the motion's on the floor.
Okay.
And I won't speak for Councillor Kyle on this one.
Councillor Kyle?
I'm okay with that direction as well.
So we'll take the original one off the table, and then we're going to go with Councillor Chambers and Councillor Howe's at Allison's suggestion that we take it to a different committee and that everyone's involved, and then we'll work out the details at another time. Everyone's clear on that? Councillor Miller, you're okay with that?
I'm as clear as any any motion this evening, Mr. Mayor.
It's been a funny night. Anyway, okay, we'll vote on that. All those in favor? Opposed? That's good. Okay. Which 12.3, do we still deal with 12.3? Councillor Arnaud, you want to keep it on the table, and Councillor Kyle?
I'm inclined to pause and defer to Councillor Kyle on what she wants to do,
You want to
given
table
a different direction on the preceding item.
No, I just had a comment that for the discussion that we just had, I just wanted to make it very clear that at no time were Councillor Oakley and I ever involved in any delegations that no one else was invited to, and I just want that stated for the record because I feel that was a bit of an unfair comment. And there was no delegations of any nature at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference. There was no delegations even as an option. So I just wanted to make sure that's clear to everyone that no one was having meetings without anyone else knowing.
And I do take that back. I was talking about the conference that you two went to, and I was the third person on the committee and didn't get invited to it or didn't know about it until I overheard you people making travel arrangements. And that's what I was referring to, not a delegation, but an entire conference. And I was the third person on that committee. So I'll make that perfectly clear too. Anyway, moving on then, are we going to table, Councillor Kyle, are you going to table the next one, or do you want to go ahead with it? 12.3. Councillor Garneau?
I mean, it probably is not necessary because I think something like this could probably be captured in whatever the staff comes up with. The intention with this one was just to provide some sort of mechanism to provide a report on what was discussed in various government relations meetings, delegations, and activities.
Councillor Chambers?
Garcia
Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. You still here?
I'm still here. It's through your worship. I was going to suggest that this be read as a standalone motion because this wouldn't typically be involved in a terms of reference, although it can be. But this is a general practice of council following. So my suggestion would be that this would be read as a separate motion.
Okay, so we're going to proceed with it, 12.3. Councillor Kyle?
Yeah, and I guess if, to Allison's point, it's not necessarily exclusive to government relations either. So it would provide the opportunity for any council member who attended any conference, any meeting, to have an opportunity to provide a report back. So it's not necessarily something specific to government relations. It came up as a part of government relations to begin with, but yeah, to Allison's point, it could be its own standalone motion that just provides a standing agenda item on an agenda following any sort of conference that would provide council members who are in attendance the opportunity to share what they learned or provide some sort of update on where they were.
Comments, questions? Councillor Chambers?
Yeah, and I like that idea, and I'm going to extend it one step further. That's something that I think should be done and should have been done a long time ago, and that is have a standing agenda item where councillors can speak to any item. If I want to stand up and invite everybody to the Harley Strawberry Social, a report on this Harley Strawberry Social, there's no opportunity to do that under other business. So if there's an opportunity during the agenda for any councillor that wishes, it doesn't have to do it, but if he wishes or she wishes to make comment on any issue, that should be an opportunity to speak to council. So I would like to see an agenda item to allow councillors to, if Councillor Coleman wants to stand up and talk about the price of grain as it affects he should be allowed to do that. And maybe that's something we can think about and add to the agenda as well.
Is that a friendly amendment to just add that, Councillor Garneau?
I don't know that we're formally on the floor, but I think there is value to that. And one of the things that struck me when I was first elected is that we don't have a mechanism at council to acknowledge accomplishments, achievements, introductions in our broader community. This was certainly something very familiar to me in the university sector, but also when we look to our provincial and federal legislatures, there's opportunities for members to rise on key issues. And I think for us, it often gets tacked on the end of other business as an afterthought to the evening when we've been here a long time. And we have a couple of those this evening. So perhaps I would put forward then, as this is, I don't believe currently on the floor, a resolution that staff be directed to look at the procedural bylaw to introduce an opportunity at council meetings for councillors to speak to timely and relevant updates from the community or their constituency work.
I thought it was on the floor by yourself and Councillor Kyle. No? Yes? You're opposed to that?
No, I'm not opposed to that, but it was never formally put on the floor by either of us, that's all.
So it is on the floor now, Councillor Kyle and Councillor Garneau?
I think my new piece might be on the floor, taking precedent over what was circulated.
Okay, you don't want it added to what's here?
I think I would move what I spoke to in place of what was circulated.
Okay, so maybe you could just say it then again for the clerk, what we're voting on.
Did the clerk catch it down, or do you want me to give it another go?
Through your worship, what I have down very roughly is that staff be directed to review and update the procedural bylaw to include a section on the agenda that allows them to speak to other things.
So I think, if I may, other things would include timely and relevant updates from their work as a counselor.
Okay, got it?
Yes, thank you.
We're good? Okay.
And I will
Councillor
second that,
Kyle?
yeah.
You're good with it? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Holding on. Then we got the next one too, 12.4. What are we going to do with that, Councillor Garneau?
I would move it, and if we've got a seconder, I'd like to speak to it.
See, seconder, Councillor Kyle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this arises actually from a question that I asked our former clerk shortly after I was elected before the Roma conference, coming out of the broader public sector. And some of the discussions that we have had more recently, I had asked about how receipts and things needed to be itemized as far as expense claims from the conference, and was surprised to learn that there were things claimable such as alcoholic beverages under our policy that would not be consistent with what would be generally accepted practice. So this came forward in response to some rumblings I was hearing behind the scenes. Certainly there have been other elected officials in hot water as of late for attempting to run things through public expenses. So the hope would be that staff could just take a look and make sure if there's anywhere that we should tune up, just to really set that expectation and reinforce to our residents and property owners that we are leading by example. And certainly not to suggest that anyone's doing anything they shouldn't, but to make sure that our policy puts our best foot forward.
It's not the first time this has come up. We had something come up not that many years ago, which was corrected by staff because they felt so badly about the way it was perceived by some members of council. So I know that it has come up before and it was corrected. So when we did fall off the tracks a little bit, I say we, it wasn't me, but I mean, I was there. It was corrected immediately. So when things seemed like they weren't right, we fixed them. So this will just make that a little bit harder to fall off the track so we don't have to keep correcting it. So it's on the floor, it's been seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 12.5 is proclamation from Lil Petrella. Just to, I need on the floor first of all, sorry. Councillor Oakley and Councillor Coleman. World Suicide Prevention Day. All those in favor? The proclamation, thank you. Other business, does anyone have any other business? Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'm wondering, oh, Jeremy's left. Have they all left over there? Something came in our Friday file, and I'm looking if we can get something from staff in the sense of, I'm talking about Committee of Adjustments. And one of the things that came through our Friday file from the last committee adjustment was proposing the creation, a severance and the creation of one new residential lot in the area. And it was approved. So I'm trying to understand why something like this, A, would not come through planning if it's a severance and a new build, they're building a new house. That's my first question. And my second question is, how does Committee of Adjustment have the authority to approve such a thing? I've always struggled with Committee of Adjustment as to, you know, what they can approve, what they can't approve. You know, if there's a fence variance or something like that, sure. This is small, you know, this is far from a small amendment, so to speak. We're talking a new dwelling.
Severance, yeah.
And had we not have got this in the Friday file, potentially we never would have known about it.
Yeah. Allison.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'll apologize, first of all, I told Jeremy he could go home because I didn't know this was coming up under other business. But I can certainly get an answer to you ASAP. I will talk to him tomorrow.
I would appreciate that because this particular one, and this is, I've questioned this before, as everybody around this table knows, but this particular one came to me from a resident that this was going to be happening. I didn't know anything about it till I went by and I saw the sign, which is fine and dandy, and they told me about a meeting that was going on. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but it was on a date that wasn't our council meeting, and that's when I found, okay, so hang on, that's actually Committee of Adjustment. So it troubles me, the authority that they have. And I'll leave it at that, and I'll look for something from staff to understand at what point in time do we say, okay, this is going to come through planning. This is not going to go through Committee of Adjustment. Thank you.
There was that, but on that same list, there was a couple of other heavy-duty ones too. That list was frightening. And I wondered how they made the definition to flip it over to, I thought a couple of them should have been flipped over to council, but let's maybe get an explanation on the whole report. There was 2 pages of them.
Yep.
And four of them were kind of suspect, I thought.
Thank you.
Councillor Oakley first, and then Councillor Coleman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on sort of what Councillor Pierce is talking about here, I'd be curious in sort of the same feedback, learning what our actual requirements are, because I believe other municipalities have just gotten rid of their Committee of Adjustment altogether. I really don't see the purpose, for things large enough, it should just come to council. For things small enough, it should just be delegated to staff. I don't know necessarily what the purpose of having an additional body like that is, but I'd be happy to hear more about that and sort of maybe a bit of an environmental review.
Yeah, Councillor Coleman and then Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and not trying to flog a dead horse, but going back to 10.6, the John Noble Home, and I know we're supposed to have recorded votes. And I do know in my corner of my eye, I do notice that there were 2 councillors did not support it. Has that been recorded by the clerk so it can be reported to the John Noble Home Committee and to the City Hall? Thank you.
And Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may have Exhibit A in support of our resolution we adopted earlier. So I just wanted to bring council up to date on an item from yesterday's Brantford Airport Board meeting. Those of you who are on social media may have seen my post. As part of the meeting yesterday, Councillor Martin from the city brought forward a resolution to ask city staff to come up with a business case that would be, if adopted by city council, brought to us, asking us to invest in some capital projects at the airport. Specifically, those are runway lighting, approach lighting, and weather monitoring that relate to some safety and regulatory concerns at the airport, as well as user experience. The estimated cost at this time is about $400,000. But what I wanted to do is make sure that everyone at council was aware of that, because this has the potential, if it goes through all of the steps at the city that it would need to go through before it came to us, to be perhaps the first official ask from our neighbors as far as when we dissolved the Joint Services Committee. There was a statement made that we would invite the city to bring proposals forward to us. So more just a heads up, but also a caution that there are several other steps that have to happen first, so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves as far as this conversation. But seeing as the Brantford Airport Board is an open meeting, it's certainly likely that this conversation is going to get started sooner than later. So just more of an FYI to everyone, so we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Any other? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief update on the new merged health unit, the Grand Erie Public Health Unit. We have recruited a new medical officer of health, Dr. Jason Mallenfant, incredibly well qualified. I'm looking forward to him coming along to take up the role. But we have gone through a series of considerations of reorganization. So the split between what the CEO did in the old organization, what the MOH did in the old organization has been changed. So the MOH has more managerial roles. He's looking after all the programs and all the medical work. And the corporate services part of it now becomes what the CEO looks after. And we're actually in the process of recruiting a new CEO as well. And I'll bring forward that information when it comes clear.
Yeah, that's great news. Any other business? No? Okay, well, we're going to go in camera just for a minute, Councillor McAlpine, you're going to take us there?
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Oakley, the County of Brant Council convene in camera to discuss S2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by municipality or local board, S2392A, security of the property of the municipality or local board, S2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Administration and Operations in-camera report of June 17th, 2025.
All those in favor? And we're going to go in camera, Gary. Gary? So we have to, Councillor Pierce, we have to ratify,
Administration and Operations.
yeah?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Miller, the Administration and Operations Committee camera report be approved.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Which takes us to number 15, which is the bylaws. And Councillor Miller, it's you.
It is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kyle, that bylaws 73-25 to 76-25 and bylaws 78-25 to 84-25 be read a first time.
All those in favor of the first reading of the bylaws? If you could do it again for us, Councillor Miller.
Yeah, moved by myself, second by Councillor Kyle, that bylaws 73-25 to 76-25 and bylaws 78-25 to 84-25 be read a second time, and all preambles and clauses be adopted.
Are there any questions on the second reading of the bylaws? Seeing none, all those in favor of the second reading? And Councillor Miller, third time, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kyle, that bylaws 73-25 to 76-25 and bylaws 78-25 to 84-25 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
All those in favor of the third reading of the bylaws? Thank you. Takes us to number 16 on the agenda, which is the adjournment of the next meeting, which is Tuesday, June the 8th, here in council chambers. Looking for a motion to adjourn.